Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Marvel. My Wife is Black Phoenix. Chapter 61. Naturally, Lu Yan didn't know the plan of the Screw. On his side, he was in the bar at this time, waiting quietly for Carol's arrival. Take the piano and eat while waiting. I really don't think how fast time flies. Less than 2 hours passed before and after. Then I heard the peculiar roar of Harley motorcycles coming from the door. Kara. Immediately afterwards, the door of the bar was pushed open from the outside. Our silly eldest sister Carol walked in through the door with a blank face. At this time, I scanned the billiard tables, game consoles, and pictures of fighter planes in the bar. The frown becomes tighter. She didn't understand. She obviously came to the earth for the first time. Why is there an inexplicable sense of familiarity that surges from my heart right now? As if she had experienced all of this before. Carol was very at a loss for this specious feeling. And Lu Yan, who was next to him, saw Carol's state at this time. The corners of his mouth rose slightly, but a satisfied smile appeared. Before, when Carol first came to Earth, this guy, with firm eyes, looked murderous and disdainful. At that time, she was not so much Captain Marvel as it was a killing tool brainwashed by the Kree, and it was more appropriate. That's why Lu Yan didn't choose to step forward and actively contact the other party. But now, Carol's state is much better. If you have doubts about your true identity, then it is possible to continue the conversation. Otherwise, how can we talk about it? Come up, I'm afraid I will be killed. Lu Yan thought. His eyes motioned to the bar owner, after he retreated first. He was holding a glass of good wine and walked to Carol's side. Shaking the wine, he took the initiative to speak, and said, "Would you like something to drink?" "Ms. Firth. It's you." Carol turned his head and looked at Lu Yan, with strange flashes in his eyes. She naturally remembers Lu Yan standing behind Nick Fury before. But at this time, I was not too shocked by his appearance. Worthy of being a silly eldest sister. Pick up the wine glass and drank it directly. Pointing to the picture on the wall again, he looked at Lu Yan and asked. Said, "Where was the plane in this photo taken?" "I don't know, it should be an airport." "Airport? What about the Pegasus plan? How much do you know?" Carol looked at Lu Yan and continued to ask. Lu Yan smiled faintly when he saw this. Following Carol's words, he continued. "I know, it's actually more than you think, but the most important thing at this time is to convince you that what I'm saying is true, not deceiving, isn't it?" Lu Yan smiled and sat back on the sofa. At this time, he was a little lazy. Carol looked at him up and down in front of him for a while. When he spoke again, he said suddenly, "You and Fury agent, shouldn't they be colleagues?" "Definitely not. Why would you treat me as an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.? I'm just an ordinary video store manager." Lu Yan spoke seriously when he said this. It also seemed a bit wronged. And what Carol in front of him said to him is naturally impossible to trust all of them. Hearing this grinning, he laughed again, said, "Are you an ordinary video store manager? I don't seem to have seen any video store manager who has such a weird ability. Although we haven't played against each other yet, I'm sure that even among our Carrie people, there are very few who can defeat you with bare hands." Carol looked solemn. Lu Yan was stunned again when he heard the words. To be honest, I really didn't expect at the moment that Carol's evaluation of himself should be so high. After regaining consciousness, he grinned and talked about Guyu again and again. But looking up again, he found that Carol looked at him still solemnly, even with a little hostility. This reacted. Then I thought of the question and answer in the original book. I couldn't help but laughed bitterly again, and said, "No, don't you also suspect that I am a Screw?" Lu Yan looked helpless. Opposite him, Carol Danvers, see this at this time. It was a rare one, shook his head and said again, "No, I don't think you are from Screw, but even so, I need to ask you some questions, don't I? After all, I don't know your name until now." "Oh, you said this. This is really my negligence, sorry." Lu Yan patted his head. Then he spoke, introduced himself and Phoenix, and said, "My name is Lu Yan, I am a Chinese-American, orphan, and I am now the owner of a video store. This is my girlfriend, her name is Chin Gray, who was born and raised. I was from the United States. I used to be a student at Xavier High School. Now, I'm the owner of my video store." Xavier High School. this is more troublesome to explain. You can think of it as a school that specializes in training people with special abilities. Similar to the military school of our crew people. Carol suddenly appeared, with a suddenly realized expression on his face. Seeing this, Lu Yan twitched the corners of his mouth. But right now, before he could start the test, he went to Carol and explained clearly what happened to Xavier's school. Carol on the other side spoke, and asked Lu Yan again, saying, I don't care about you and your girlfriend, what exactly are they? Right now, I just want to know, what do you want to do after you have been following me? It's also for the Skuru people. Or is it for us the Kree? Quote. Carol looked wary. When Lu Yan heard the news, he no longer concealed it. But straight to the point, said, we came here this time, in fact, we really hope to get your help. My help here? Yes, definitely, it's not your help now, but you whose memory is fully recovered soon. Lu Yan spoke lightly, speaking plainly. But at this moment, the voice fell, but it obviously aroused the interest of Carol Danvers. Restore memory. Do you know what my memory is missing? Carol looked weird. I always felt that the man in front of me was a few years younger than him, but the kid who was just in his early 20s knew too much. She obviously arrived on Earth for the first time. How could this Earthling know that she lacked memory, this matter? Carol puzzled. On Carol's side, what the promised person didn't know was. With her questioning landing, in front of Lu Yan, there were 3 virtual pop-up windows inexplicably. God-level choice from Carol Danvers. 1. I just made a joke for you, denying that it can help Carol Danvers restore her memory. For this matter, let her fend for herself, and reward Fat House Happy Game Set for a feint. 2. I know all the details of the Pegasus project. It should be very useful to help you restore your memory. Provide relevant clues, but don't interfere too much with the plot. Reward 1 times the number of Heaven's draws. 3. Definitely can help you restore your memory. In fact, I still know what your real name is. Forcibly intervening in the plotline to help Carol Danvers find her memory fragments. Reward number of Heaven's lottery draws 5 times. Lottery. Does this pop up the lottery page again? Lu Yan was shocked. At this moment, the lottery page suddenly popped up. To be honest, my heart is full of surprise right now. After all, at the moment, Carol's remarks were entirely on his side, inducing the other party to say it. If you say that, I seem to know how to trigger this God-level selection system. Lu Yan muttered in his own heart, seemingly enlightened. Then I looked up and looked at the inquiry dialog box that popped up in front of me. The whole person was excited again. Make a lot of money. Although it's not the first time to have a God-level selection lottery. But Lu Yan can guarantee that the awards opened on the system this time are undoubtedly the richest he has ever seen. The highest reward, there are 5 chances to draw a lottery on the plains of the heavens. What else do you need to look at? Lu Yan naturally didn't even think about it, so he chose this one. As for whether this will forcefully interfere with the storyline. He doesn't care here. Besides, just look at Lu Yan's current behavior. In fact, he has been forcibly interfering with the storyline from the beginning, isn't he? Otherwise, he wouldn't be sitting in front of Carol right now. Thought so. He raised his eyes again, looked at Carol who was surprised and suspicious in front of him, and laughed again, said. Didn't I just tell you everything? I know you more than you originally thought. When you came to Earth this time, did you feel familiar with everything? It was the first time you came, but it seemed, the feeling of living here for a long time. Lu Yan smiled at Mimi's opening. And now, these words can be said to Carol's heart all at once. Carol, who was already confused when he heard the words, instantly became calm. Then nodded, just said yes. Before he asked Lu Yan, what was going on behind this? Here, Lu Yan followed his words, but he didn't mean to play mystery at all. The truth came out directly, and he said to Carol who had lost his memory. That's because you are a native of the Earth. Your real name is Carol Danvers. Before being brainwashed by the Kree, you were an aboriginal of the Earth. Lu Yan's tone was calm. But right now the words came out and fell into the ears of Carol Danvers on the other side. But it is no less than a thunderstorm. Carol Danvers, who had just had a calm face, went violently when he heard the news. No, this is impossible. CGAD, as a soldier of Carrie, How could I be a human being on Earth? Carol barked loudly. In her heart, although during the time she came to Earth, I also had great doubts about what was going on around me. But after all, it was just a doubt. Above the inner subjective consciousness, she still regards herself as a warrior on the planet Klin. In this case, Lu Yan suddenly said these words. For Carol, definitely caused a huge impact. Under panic, the silly eldest sister was also directly beaten up. Get up quickly. A pat with both hands. At this moment, he directly lifted the table in front of him. Click on it. A big hole was blasted out of the ceiling of the bar again. Looking at the hole, Phoenix, who had been silent for a while, stood up in an instant with his sword eyebrows erect. Look embarrassed at this time. For Carol, it was obvious that he was also hostile. At the moment, the two women are facing each other. Lu Yan is still sitting calmly in his position. Seeing Carol's flustered expression, he even spoke, took the initiative to be by the side, laughed, and said again. Do you think I'm lying? Actually, you should know the truth of this matter better than anyone else. HMPH, the screw touched my mind. How do I know which of the memories in my mind at this time are true and which are false? Carol snorted coldly. When Lu Yan saw this, he shook his head and said, You two look at the screw people too high. They can at best untie the shackles that existed in your head before, reminding you of the memories that belong to you. My memory. Carol lowered his head and frowned, now seeming to realize something. Seeing this next to him, Lu Yan laughed again. Speaking hurriedly, calmly said, Don't worry, you don't have to worry, this is my side of the word, if you don't believe it, I can take you to see the evidence. Evidence? You still have evidence? Carol was shocked again. Me, I don't have one, but this guy, there is. Lu Yan laughed. After saying this, he suddenly pointed his finger at the entrance of the bar. Carol followed and turned his head. After a while, the bar door was slammed open. Nick Fury hurried in from the door. Look at Lu Yan and Carol who are talking and laughing in this bar. At this time, it was really full of anger. But what to do, he can't beat Lu Yan again. It is impossible to really be an enemy with Lu Yan. So the poor bitter nag. At this time, when he sat down beside Lu Yan, with some resentment, he talked to Lu Yan again, said. Mr. Lu, you can really make a shield look hard. Haha, don't be like that, Fury Agent, your attitude, how do you feel like a deeply resentful woman? Lu Yan laughed. To be honest, watch Nick Fury do this in front of him. It's really interesting. Nick Fury made a cold snort when he heard the words. But at this moment, obviously I don't want to talk nonsense with Lu Yan. Looking at him in the blink of an eye, he went straight in and said. Where is the screw who you captured before? Where is he now? Screw, you just captured a screw. Carol was also curious beside him. Lu Yan didn't mean to answer this question. Yuzai drank another glass of wine and said, It's just a screw, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, that's an alien. Nick Fury gritted his teeth. Lu Yan slapped him on the shoulder and flicked, Don't lose too much because of a small mistake, Fury Agent, just a screw, is it comparable to the female warrior from Crystar? Female warrior. Nick Fury was taken aback. He is one of the few smart people in the world. Upon hearing this, I guessed something instantly. Turning his head to look at Carol next to him, he became excited again, said. Ms. Carol, is there anything you need our shield help? Carol didn't speak. At this moment, Lu Yan took the stubborn words first, and said leisurely, Project Tianma. Our Ms. Carol is very interested in the Tianma project. Fury Agent, you should know, where can I find the files for this project? Nick Fury was taken aback. I didn't expect Lu Yan to be so direct. And looking up again, looking at Lu Yan and Carol's eyes at this time, they all saw him. It's not easy to tell lies. Instead, he nodded. It was admitted to the matter. I thought that Lu Yan spoke here and took the initiative to mention this, because he wanted him to take everyone with him to investigate the files about the Tianma project. But I never thought of it. Lu Yan who just spoke and said this. Suddenly, the conversation changed again. There is no meaning to go directly at all. Instead, it is going to let Nick Fury go alone to take the relevant files and materials. Bring them to view. On Lu Yan's side, he wanted to take Carol and go to other places. What? This is absolutely not good. Nick Fury originally planned to use this opportunity to get closer to the alien, Carol Danvers. In other words, it is closely monitoring the other party's actions on the Earth. But at the moment, Lu Yan's plan has failed his overall plan. The thought of becoming a soy sauce player again. Nick Fury was naturally unwilling. So at the moment he shook his head, without even thinking about it, he turned down Lu Yan's request. In fact, it's not just him. Carol Danvers sitting next to Nick Fury. Upon hearing Lu Yan's words, his brows wrinkled instantly. Obviously, I am also very dissatisfied with Lu Yan's move. Although it's about memory, she is still very curious. But on this trip, she came for the Skrull people after all. So at this moment, he also shook his head and expressed rejection. Seeing a group of 4 people, except Phoenix, the remaining 2 refused their request. Lu Yan reached out and touched his nose. I didn't feel discouraged either. Instead, he opened his mouth, and toward Carol, another name burst out. Maria Rambo, once Captain Marvel, the best friend on Earth. By the way, I also attached a photo. These are just waiting times. Lu Yan is okay, through the computer, let Professor X find it to him through his special relationship in the relevant department of CIA. At this moment in front of Carol, Lu Yan also simply talked about the relationship between Carol and Maria Rambo. On Carol Danvers' side, the more I listened, the more my heart palpitations became. As for Nick Fury next to him, it was even more shocked that his eyes were about to fall to the ground. Unexpectedly, he had always wanted to know the alien visitors in front of him. The essential identity is also an Earthling. This is simply weird. How is this possible? Nick Fury was puzzled. But at this moment, I can't wait to ask him again. Here Lu Yan has stopped the spoiler. He smiled towards Carol again. For your affairs, to be honest, all I know is only so much. For more specific information, I think you should meet this Maria Rambo in person. I believe she will give you the answer. Only the Pegasus plan you want to know about. I can tell you, this Maria Rambo is also considered a half participant. From this point of view, you are not a waste of your mission. How is it, now, are you interested in taking a trip with me? Lu Yan smiled at the corner of his mouth. When Carol heard the words, his expression was instant, green and purple, and he began to change crazily. In fact, Sane tells Carol at this time that he shouldn't trust a stranger so much. But the name Maria Blue Devils. It really brought back his memories. Especially the group photo on this picture. Not only her, but also herself, as well as when Carol was in Carrie before. The woman who kept flashing back in her mind. So after a few tangles, in the end, she agreed to Lu Yan's proposal. As for Nick Fury, this guy. His dissatisfaction was directly ignored by Lu Yan. Now the little bitter nag is the director again. He had no intention of explaining too much to the other party. Only prevarication, told Nick Fury. Everything he wants to know is in the relevant documents. Also waved. Just let him go. Nick Fury felt bitter when he saw this. But there is no way. People are lighthearted. After thinking about it again and again, I can only grit my teeth and reluctantly accept the arrangement given by Lu Yan. But before leaving, he thought of something. Turned his head, turned to Lu Yan behind, asked again, and said. By the way, Lu Yan, if I get the information at that time, where should I find you? Where else can I go? At that time Maria Rambo's house, street. Lewis. Lu Yan's tone is relaxed. Nick Fury is also a straightforward person. After hearing Lu Yan say this, he simply stopped asking. He turned his head, drove into his black car, and left directly. Toward the direction of the military base, galloping away. So, how should we leave now? There are 3 people here, don't you expect to ride my scooter? The silly big sister is the silly big sister. Carol was still entangled in her heart just now. But now after the real decision is made. The whole person makes people feel, but it is not easy. Lu Yan lowered his head when he heard the news, glanced at Carol's motorcycle, and smiled. Your car is too slow, let alone 3 people, let you ride alone, Maria's house is slow. Well, listen to you, do you have a faster way? Carol asked rhetorically. Lu Yan smiled mysteriously when he saw this. Suddenly patted the soft sofa under the buttocks, said. Come on, this is the means of transportation for our trip. Are you kidding me? Carol was taken aback. Then he glanced at Luyan. His face was a little weird and said, this joke is not very humorous. Who is joking with you? Come up and you will know. Luyan rolled his eyes. In my heart, I started to complain about this terrible conversation. Suddenly, it seemed that he shouldn't have said such things as inviting Carol to sit on the sofa. Fortunately, Carol didn't think much about it here. Turning his head, he also sat beside Luyan very proudly. He tilted his head and smiled at the corners of his mouth. It was obviously a pair, waiting to see Luyan's joke. Seeing this, Luyan didn't say much, just knocked on the sofa with his hands. With a buzz, purple light gushed from his body in an instant. Heavy fruits, anti-gravity. In an instant, the sofa trembled. At this moment, it was like being casted by magic. Directly supporting the three of Luyan, they rose into the air. Under the shock of the silly eldest sister Carol Danvers. Carrying the three of them, they floated towards the direction of St. Louis. You guy, are you really an Earthling? Definitely, otherwise what do you think I am? The journey is a bit far, I'll go to bed first. There are magazines on the sofa, you feel bored, you can read it. Luyan yawned. After saying this, follow, under the gaze of the silly eldest sister. He fell directly on the side of Phoenix's beautiful legs and started roar fell asleep. The speed of the sofa flight is naturally not as fast as that of an airplane. But it is indeed much faster than a motorcycle. That afternoon, near dusk. The sofa controlled by Luyan has already fallen from midair. Carol came down from above, also simply. Just walked in the direction of Maria's house. And seeing her heading at this time, Luyan didn't mean to follow her at this time. It's not for any other reason. It's Luyan, who really feels numb to these tricks that his best friends recognize. So at this moment, they played the piano together and waited outside. Chin naturally had no objection to this. He even reached out to help Luyan, kneading his shoulders. After rubbing his shoulders in this way, I enjoyed the 9880 for almost half an hour. I saw Carol, the silly eldest sister, and walked out of the room again. Along with her, there was a black woman who was the same age as her. Needless to say, this woman is naturally Maria Rambo. It's definitely, followed by Maria's little daughter. Holding Carol's legs at this time, a pair of small eyes like black beans, blinking. Looking at Luyan again, he was also full of curiosity. Seeing this, Luyan didn't tease the little girl's mind. Instead, his gaze fell on Carol again. He asked her again and said, how about, here, have you found the answer you want? When Carol heard the words, his lips moved slightly. At this time, it was obvious that he had not recovered from the shock that he had just received. Just now, in Maria Rambo's room, she saw hundreds of photos that belonged to her. She was indeed awakened by these photos of the memory of the Earth. But with the awakening of this large amount of memory, Carol as a whole, in a short time, to be honest, on the contrary, he became even more confused. This confusion comes from the denial of the identity of the Kree. It sounds a bit complicated, but Luyan feels completely understandable here. So now, looking in front of him, Carol grinned again. Take the initiative to appease, it's okay, you don't have to make a decision now. In fact, Maria Rambo doesn't know much about the Tianma project. If you really want to know more about this matter, for details, just wait for Nick Fury to come over. I just received a call from him. This guy is now rushing in the direction of St. Louis. Luyan explained. Carol nodded, with no objection. Maria Rambo next to her is obviously not a silly eldest sister like Carol, and she believes everything that others say. At least at this moment, I saw Luyan, a young man who was obviously less than 20 years old, gesticulating in front of them. I can't help but have some doubts in my mind. After speaking, he asked again, saying, who are you, why do you know something about the Tianma project? This is confidential. Maria Rambo looked wary. For ordinary people, yes, but for me, it's obviously not, Ms. Maria. Luyan smiled humbly. After saying this, he hooked his right hand. The original petals on the ground flew up spontaneously. At this time, they actively entangled together, woven into a love-like flower basket, and fell into the hands of Maria's daughter. The first time I meet, this is a meeting gift for my daughter. Lu Yan smiled humbly. What? Seeing this, the little girl naturally screamed in excitement. All the attention is on the flower basket in the hand. Apart from her, the remaining 3 women in the field, including Phoenix, look into Lu Yan's gaze again. You can't avoid being surprised. Obviously, I really didn't expect that Lu Yan's shot at this time would still have such an effect. This is not simply gravity, or repulsion control. Lu Yan's mastery of his own ability. At this time, it is obviously out of the elementary level stage. Entered the micro level. On the Earth, Lu Yan is helping Carol take the initiative to retrieve those memories that originally belonged to her. Let her re-recognize her identity. At the same time, in the interstellar space on the other end, all the members of the Kree squad to which Carol belongs are in deep anxiety. What to do, Captain? Except at the beginning, Firth Carol with amnesia, a pseudonym on the planet Carrie, came to Earth and sent us a message. Since then, we have not been able to contact us until now. Yeah, I also think it's weird. It means Firth's side. Will there be nothing else? Do we want to go to the Earth to see it now? A group of Carrie people who accompanied them spoke one after another. All of them were a little worried. In fact, it is more than them. Captain Rog, who was on this trip, reacted the same way. But at this moment, he just turned his head and didn't wait for him to speak again. The communicator page on the directly ahead spacecraft suddenly lit up. Ronan, who belonged to the ruler of the Kree, suddenly appeared in front of everyone. Ronan. Seeing this, Captain Rog saluted respectfully. Ronan's face was cold here, and as soon as he spoke, he rebuked him. The accuser, although he admitted his crimes, because of your actions, we have suffered a greater crisis here. That's a trap, Ronan. Rog said when he saw this and hurriedly explained. They were trying to seduce our member Firth, and then kidnap her, wanting to pass her and get our key location. I don't care about this. Get rid of these troubles right away. Roger, don't let me take a trip to the galaxy in person. Ronan spoke coldly. After saying this, he cut off the communicator directly. And the Kree squad led by young Rog. After hearing the ultimatum from Ronan, his complexion became dignified obviously. What should I do now, Roger? After a moment of silence, his subordinate Koraz couldn't help but asked again towards young Luoj. Rog's complexion was obviously not very good looking. At this time, I heard the subordinates questioning. After that, he snorted and ordered again. What else can we do? We definitely dared to act in advance before Ronan could do it himself. Continue toward the Earth. Roger spoke coldly. Speaking of this, his complexion is a bit unpleasant. Seeing his reaction, naturally, his subordinates did not dare to ask any more. One by one bowed their heads and hurriedly moved into action. Occasionally, he looked up and quietly looked at his boss in a trance. Thought he was worried about Firth. More than just knowing that what he was worried about at this time would not be Firth's safety at all. But something else. After half an hour, Nick Fury finally arrived in the state of San Luis Ana. As in the original book, he rushed out of the military base in a newly developed aircraft, accompanied by the cat that was regarded as the 2-yuan beast. It's definitely, these are not the places that make Lu Yan feel astonished at the moment. It really surprised him. It came from Nick Fury's side, as well as Kohler, his boss of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's definitely, this Kohler is not a real person either. It was what the Skuru from Talos had pretended to be. Since Carol did not go to the military base, it seemed that there was no conflict between them. This fake Kohler did not reveal his identity. Lu Yan guessed this. But I really didn't expect that he would come here with Nick Fury on this trip. Thinking about this, Lu Yan's expression moved slightly, and he was about to say something more. Carol frowned beside him. One step ahead, said towards Nick Fury. Fury agent, did you bring an outsider here? Outsider. No, Kohler is my superior, he is not a bad guy, and his side is very concerned about Carol and your affairs. Nick Fury, who doesn't know the true identity of Kohler now, is still defending Kohler. At this moment, he opened his mouth. Bala Bala said a lot before dispelling Carol's worries. Then, he took out the trip from his backpack to the military base and copied the relevant documents about the Pegasus plan. Together with Carol, he walked into the room again. Although Lu Yan knew the identity of Kohler, he did not directly expose it. Sitting outside the courtyard all the time, waiting quietly. As he expected, although the fake caller went in and stayed for a while. But after that, he came out of the room again and walked towards him alone. I plan to make contact with him alone. You are Lu Yan, Mr. Lu, you have been admiring your name for a long time. The fake caller now has a happy smile on his face. Walking to Lu Yan's side, he stretched out his hand and wanted to shake hands with Lu Yan. But at this moment, Lu Yan looked at him up and down, but didn't mean to continue to accompany this guy in disguise. But shook his head directly. It seems that you Skuru people are far less sincere than I thought. Kuru. Upon hearing Lu Yan's words, the smile on fake caller's face instantly stiffened. What Skuru, Mr. Lu, have you misunderstood something? Oh, isn't it, Mr. Taros, that's what you think. Lu Yan sneered and directly exposed his identity. Hearing what he said, the fake caller finally couldn't pretend. When he walked to stand still in front of Lu Yan, his expression was very serious, and he said again with dignity. Mr. Lu, can you see through the disguise belonging to the Skuru? This is impossible. Our disguise is the Ronan army, which cannot be seen through with a professional scanner. You only rely on your naked eyes. Where are there so many impossibility in the world? It's just your imagination, which is limited. Lu Yan sneered, looking at Taros at this time, his temper was not so good. On the contrary, with some killing intent, he said again. Hurry up, go, Talos, I don't like killing people, but it doesn't mean that I like to see nasty guys and get an eye in front of me. The fake caller, neither, is wrong, now it should be said that it is Talos. Seeing this, he paused, then spoke again and finally stopped struggling with this question. Instead, he looked at Lu Yan and said with some doubts. Your Excellency Lu Yan, through my subordinates, you passed a message to me, saying that you want to see me. How now? You want to say that I have a great contrast between the front and the back, do you have a bad attitude towards you? Lu Yan sneered, looking at the Skuru on the opposite side, with an unhappy expression. Hee, isn't that what you Skuru did by yourself? I was so courageous, I even dared to investigate me in Hell's Kitchen, and planned to attack the people in my video store. I really thought that I didn't know what I was doing, no one knew. Lu Yan snorted coldly. Right now, the main reason for the change in his attitude towards the Skuru is here. Not long ago, he received a message from the Hell's Kitchen just over the corner. There is a Skuru who pretends to be him Lu Yan and wants to kidnap the bullseye. If it weren't for the strong eyesight, coupled with Fiend's Covenant's relationship, you can see the difference at a glance. In the current video store, I really don't know what it's like to be disturbed by these Skuru gangs. Although really speaking, he is not particularly concerned about the life and death of the bullseye. But this is not a good sign, does it? As a result, the eyes are his subordinates after all. Secondly, if he stayed in the store at that time, it was the piano instead of the bullseye. It's hard to say what the situation is now. Once the disguised Skuru is exposed, it is likely that Phoenix Force will be violent again. This alone would have exhausted Lu Yan's early favorability for their race. Lu Yan would like them, that's weird. And heard Lu Yan say so. Talos' face changed again. Unexpectedly, Lu Yan here is also very familiar with what happened in Hell's Kitchen. For a moment, the panic passed in my heart. Suddenly began to regret his previous stupid actions. Looking at Lu Yan again, there is really only powerlessness. Use Kohler's false identity. Talos naturally knew how powerful Lu Yan was originally. It is precisely because of this. Only then did he know deeply what it meant to be against such a strong man for their Skuru tribe. Thinking about this, he lowered his head and wanted to explain. But a pity, not everyone has a glass heart like a silly elder sister, who understands others. On Lu Yan's side, he didn't even listen to his explanation. Following a wave of hands, the skill Iron Curtain was displayed. In front of Talos, there was an invisible wall of gas in an instant. He directly flew his whole person out. It fell under the big banyan tree 7 or 8 meters away. I fell a lot of meat and vegetables. But the more so. On the contrary, Talos became more determined and wanted to redeem Lu Yan's idea. After approaching several times in a row, they were all beaten back by Lu Yan. Talos was so fierce that he slammed in public and knelt directly on the ground. said loudly towards Lu Yan. Mr. Lu, this is something that we did not do authentically. But please forgive me, we Skuru, after all, are a weak race in the universe. They are not strong. When dealing with others, we must do something in advance. Preventive measures, otherwise it is easy to be annihilated. Talos said miserably. But Lu Yan is still unmoved here. In any case, he would never make another move to help Talos' tribe. Instead, they intend to let them fend for themselves. And heard the movement outside. Carol and others came out of the room again. Seeing this scene again, I was dumbfounded. Under the shock of roar, some did not react. What happened? Nick Fury's brows immediately frowned and became Chuan. Although he doesn't like his boss very much. But after all, he is his boss. Nick Fury can't watch him kneel in front of others at this moment, without being indifferent. So he turned his head, hurriedly spoke, and yelled at Lu Yan again, saying, Mr. Lu, is there any misunderstanding between you and Mr. Kohler? If so, can you get him up from the ground? This is what he is going to kneel down. What does it have to do with me? Lu Yan waved his hand, looking a little helpless. Throw things off to nothing. Nick Fury sees this, his heart is fierce. I wanted to say something more. Talos, who was kneeling next to him, saw this scene, and hurriedly waved his hand to stop him. Originally, he felt that things were a bit big. Naturally, he didn't want to see Nick Fury at this moment, so he reprimanded Lu Yan for this. So he shouted directly at this time, yes, Mr. Lu is right, I kneeled down voluntarily. Kneel voluntarily, sir, you are a high-level agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. When Nick Fury heard the news, his brows became tighter. Speaking of this, although he stopped. But the implication is also obvious. How do you say it is also a high-level agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.? This is suddenly kneeling to others, it seems something is wrong. Talos is not an idiot as the leader of the Skrulls, and he naturally understands what Nick Fury means. But right now, in this scene, besides kneeling, does he have any other choice? In this matter, he had done something wrong here. And it's not just as simple as doing it wrong, but also because of the gap between this matter and a top powerhouse on Earth that had originally planned to befriend them. Just thought of this. Talos felt so distressed that he really regretted it. I felt that I was too cautious before. Not only did it fail to achieve any substantial benefits, but it was unwise to deal with others innocently. Thinking of this, Talos' mouth couldn't help but a wry smile appeared. Then he looked up, but he didn't intend to use Nick Fury and Kohler's identity to continue to stir up the wind and rain. If I moved my mind again this time, I directly restored my Skuru identity. Towards Nick Fury, he said again, don't get excited, Fury Agent, I am not a member of your S.H.I.E.L.D. Looking at the turquoise Skuru, suddenly appeared in front of him. The people who had just looked confused were naturally surprised again. After that, Nick Fury stretched out his hand, smoothed, and took out the gun hidden in his waist. The muzzle was directed at Talos who was kneeling. He said with a vigilant face, you turned out to be a Skuru. Then I started from the military base and I was fooled by you all the way. It can't be regarded as a deception. I just used Kohler's identity to walk with you to find Lu Yan and Miss Carol. Talos argued with a wry smile. What are you looking for? Help yourself. Talos sighed, the expression in his eyes was also painful. Nick Fury snorted coldly. It was obvious at this time that he still had doubts about Taro's remarks. As for Carol next to him, he turned his head and looked at Lu Yan who was sitting on the sofa next to him with an indifferent expression. I couldn't help but asked again, saying, Lu Yan, what is going on with this? You ask me. To be precise, you should ask him. Lu Yan stretched out his hand and nodded Talos. He didn't want to say more. Seeing this helpless, Talos could only smile and said, in front of everyone, he told the whole story. Definitely, when he said this, he was still kneeling on the ground and did not get up. And after I heard Taros finished talking, Nick Fury, who frowned just now, couldn't help but look very fast. Immediately nodded and said directly that he deserved it. Angrily said again, it's worthy of the crime to make you Skuru people mess around and be targeted right now. And heard Nick Fury say so. Talos, who was already sad, opened his mouth again. I still want to refute the original intention. But in the end he shook his head and said nothing. Only a little bit of depression appeared on his face, and there was helplessness. He also said, "This matter, really speaking, is completely a mistake in my leadership. I hope you don't blame the Skuru clan. If blood is necessary to dispel the dissatisfaction of the people, you kill me. I am willing to apologize for this," Taros said solemnly. This made Nick Fury, who originally wanted to mock him, a few more words, but also shut up. For a while, he didn't know what to say. Carol, who had been silent next to him, raised his brow slightly when he saw this. She has completely recovered her memory now, and naturally knows that the Skuru people are not a militant people as they were described by the Kree people. In fact, on the contrary, the Carrie people who used her to brainwash her are the real brutal races in the universe. The identities of the victim and the perpetrator have been completely reversed. It is precisely because of this that in the past 6 years, Carol, who has slaughtered many Skurus, did not shout and scream as before when he saw the Skurus again. On the contrary, for this race, from the bottom of his heart, he brought guilt. At this moment, I was seeing Talos behave like this. "Can't help but ask again," said. "I don't understand you Kuru people. You have worked hard to find me and Luyan on the earth. What do you want to do? Didn't you want to kill me before?" Talos turned his head when he heard the words, and looked at Carol's gaze somewhat complicated. But at this moment, he didn't hide anything but opened his mouth, frankly. "That was before. At that time, we only regarded you as a Kree, but now, we already know your true identity. Okay, doctor, kept secret, my wife and children. If you have fully recovered your memory, you should still remember the destination that Dr. Marvel said to you. Help us decipher the address coordinates," Talos pleaded. After asking for help many times, it was discovered that Luyan really didn't have the desire to help him. He could only give up temporarily and continued to ask for help. Instead, he turned his head and put all hope on Carol's body. Facts have proved that he bet on Zuhu right this time. Carol felt guilty for slaughtering the Skuru for many years. At this moment, facing Taro's request for help, I really felt unable to refuse. After hesitation for a while, he finally nodded and agreed to his reason. But seeing Carol agree, Taros was overjoyed. He quickly got up and took out the CD butterfly with the last recording of the black box from his backpack. In the hands of Carol. I heard that he had the black box of the crashed plane in his hand. Carol and others are naturally interested. Everyone followed and walked towards the computer in Maria Rambo's home. Everyone was obviously interested in the coordinates that Dr. Marvel gave at the end of the plane crash. Only Luyan remained in place and did not move. Closing your eyes at this time, it seemed to fall into a false sleep state. Watching his reaction, everyone shook their heads slightly, but didn't say much. Only Carol whispered, "I feel that Luyan is too lethargic. After all, before, when we rushed to St. Louis Anna from the Hell's Kitchen with him. This guy has slept all the way on Phoenix's lap. How long has it been since we arrived in the state of St. Louis Anna? He fell asleep again. Is it a pig?" She complained silently in her heart. In fact, it is not clear that Luyan at this moment is not in a state of sleep. But take this opportunity to enter the system space again. In the black box, what did Dr. Marvel say? Others don't know, but Luyan knows it all. It is precisely because of this that he is naturally not as positive as the others. On the contrary, it feels that it is not this time to follow behind everyone and blend in blindly. It's just a waste of time. So after some calculations, I felt that it would be better to take this opportunity to go to the system space and look at your rewards. Yes, congratulations to the host for completing the selection and helping Carol retrieve the lost memory, rewarding 5 chances to draw on the plane of the heavens. However, as soon as he entered the system space, the familiar reminder sounded in Luyan's mind again. Luyan was naturally happy when he heard the news. There was no hesitation immediately. Looking at the 5-chapter lottery charm remaining in the system space, he rubbed his hands. He doesn't have any obsessions that he has to collect 10 cards and make 10 consecutive draws. So at the moment, there is no hesitation, the lottery has started. 5 straight draws. Ding. 5 consecutive draws on the planes of the heavens, starting now. The golden system roulette appears again. Seeing the pointer, Kerala turned his head. Luyan's heart also mentioned his throat. Thinking about it, basically every single draw before, I can explode good things. I thought that this 10 consecutive draw was no exception. On my own side, it can continue the miracle. But when the lottery starts, the first lottery reminder pops up. He couldn't help but feel a little lost again. Ding! The lucky draw was successful. Congratulations to the host for getting the original tube top of the Pirate Empress, one piece. Ding! The lucky draw was successful. Congratulations to the host. You have successfully obtained the Naruto world. July also wrote a small yellow book, Hot Heaven. Ding! The draw was successful. 4 consecutive lottery draws. It is not original underwear, or intimate heaven, this kind of masterpiece. Lu Yan, who looked at him, was dumbfounded. Shin said, "What's wrong with the system now? Is the taste so big before and after repeated? Although these are good things to say. But anyway, it's also a lottery on the plane of heaven, okay. If you really burst out with a female emperor who can make love and affection with me, I won't say anything. It's just that these items are drawn, this grade is too low." Lu Yan muttered silently in his heart. At this time, it was unavoidable and a little disappointed. I thought that my European ancestry was exhausted with the previous single draws. Fortunately, the 5th draw landed. The situation has turned around again. Finally, a new skill burst out. Ding! The draw was successful. Congratulations to the host. Luck broke out, and successfully obtained the skill Thousand-Handed Buddha. He heard the last system prompt sound in his mind, and Lu Yan couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. My heart said it was okay. After 5 consecutive draws, I didn't get to the bottom, and I didn't get a good thing. He lowered his head again, but he was a little confused. Instead, I started to think about what kind of technique CGAD could be. Thinking about it, he directly stretched out his hand, clicked on the introduction panel, and looked at it carefully. Skill: Thousand Hands Buddha. Description: in the anime, Westward Journey, the signature skill of Killing Goddess of Mercy can be used to summon the phantom of the Thousand-Handed Buddha from behind, and it can attack hundreds of magical weapons. The power of each attack is no less than a meteorite meteor. I'll stop, every attack is no less than a meteorite meteor, is it so fierce? Lu Yan looked at the relevant description, and the whole person was also taken aback. Turn around and think about it carefully. I finally remembered who this Heart Guanyin was. It's the guy in the comics who confronts Gang with Tathagata. Lu Yan murmured, although I knew that this skill was later directly blown by the Tathagata's sleepiness Zen. But he didn't feel disappointed by it. On the contrary, the whole person is very excited. Although in the original book, Killing Guanyin lost to Tathagata with this skill. But this is not because this skill is not strong enough. But the Tathagata is too strong there, and the protagonist's halo is possessed. 10,000 steps back and said, even if it is really worse than Sleepy Zen, Lu Yan feels nothing to lose. After all, this trick is handsome. Lu Yan can imagine if he would play this trick in front of Phoenix. What will happen? This girl must be cautious in her admiration. Thinking of this, Lu Yan was a little eager to try. I think I have a chance, and I must show off in front of Phoenix. Rubbing his hands, after calming down his excitement. Exit again from the system space. Only then discovered that the time was just right. Talos and Carol also walked out of the study. How about, have you found the coordinates you want? Lu Yan stretched and asked casually. Hearing this, Talos nodded again and again, with a look of excitement. Found it. Really found it. Haha, I can finally meet my wife and children. But then the voice just fell. Nick Fury next to him pours cold water again, said. Don't think too much, the coordinates can be in space, you didn't think about it, how should we go up next? This is simple, hand it over to our Skuru scientists, and transform the plane we came to, and it will be fine. Talos spoke confidently. After saying this, he has used a special communicator to contact his subordinates. And take advantage of this juncture. Carol turned his head and invited Lu Yan again, wanting him to travel in space together. After all, a trip to space is full of unknown dangers. If Lu Yan is with them, their safety can also be truly guaranteed. However, this plan was rejected by Lu Yan's side without even thinking about it. Why is this? Lu Yan, don't you have the slightest yearning for the vast and unmistakable space? Seeing that Lu Yan refused so decisively and simply, Carol stared immediately, behaving very stunned. Even somewhat disappointed. Think about it, too, for someone like Carol, who insists on being a female flight crew. Ever since I was young, I have to fight for a winner or loser in everything I want to come. I made this request this time. Lu Yan should open his mouth and agree. No matter how much I thought of the other side, he would still refuse this request. But right now, Nick Fury didn't feel any surprises about Lu Yan's reaction at this moment. On the contrary, he had expected it to be like this a long time ago. After all, on Carol's side, he and Lu Yan are just new to each other. But Nick Fury has secretly observed Lu Yan for quite some time. So he knows Lu Yan much better than Carol. It is natural to know that although Lu Yan is strong, his character is very salty. It is not an exaggeration to say that he is most afraid of trouble. At this time, I don't want to go to outer space for adventure, but it is also expected. So at this time, he did not speak, and helped Carol persuade Lu Yan. Only Carol said a few words afterwards. However, after discovering that Lu Yan was always indifferent. That's why I gave up this idea reluctantly. She looks unhappy here. Next to her, her best friend felt a little pleased. After seeing the power of Lu Yan, I felt that it was a good thing to have such a guy staying behind. So speak again at this time. However, as in the original book, the daughter of his own family was sent to his grandfather and grandmother's house for foster care. Instead, he opened his mouth, causing trouble to Lu Yan. I hope he can take care of it. Putting it on Lu Yan's side is safer, but it's more reassuring than putting it on your grandparents. Lu Yan naturally knew what Maria Rambo was thinking. Although he didn't plan to go to outer space, he still wanted to see what the famous Tesseract looked like. So now, after hesitation, he also decided to stay at Maria Rambo's house and wait for a few days. Nodded, and directly agreed to this request. Seeing Lu Yan agree so happy, Maria Rambo is overjoyed. The remaining few people went to check the plane that was borrowed from the military base by Nick Fury. As for the Skrull scientists whom Taros had boasted about before, they didn't wait long, and they were in place that night. Don't tell me, the modification technology of the Skrull scientist is really good. In addition, this aircraft was originally a secret model specially made by the military base of the United States. It can be regarded as using the world's most high-end flight technology right now. Therefore, the entire conversion process was smooth before and after. It took less than 2 days before and after. Time on day 3. It has been completely refitted. Time does not wait. After the modification was completed, but after a little debugging, everyone decided to take off directly. And before liftoff, Nick Fury said this to Lu Yan very solemnly. On this side of the Earth, it's all up to you, Lu Yan. After all, under their calculations, the Kree people who brainwashed Carol before would never give up so easily. Especially, after knowing that Carol has probably broken free from the spiritual shackles of the Kree people. We'll definitely go to the Earth to find her whereabouts. So in this case, the Earth will become very dangerous. Thinking about this, Nick Fury and others are a little worried. However, Lu Yan still has a big heart. Hearing several people talking, they just waved their hands a little impatiently. Then he yawned, pulling Phoenix together, went to Maria Rambo's guest room, and went to rest. For several days in a row, I was struggling outside. It's just that Lu Yan at the moment has not had time to win this time for himself, and feels satisfied. Open the door again. I saw Ms. Maria's girl standing outside the room with a look of curiosity. Can't help but change his face. Shin said, it was so fun just now. Unexpectedly, I didn't notice, and was listened to the corner by a little girl. A look of embarrassment at this moment. I was thinking how to explain to this girl. No one thought that this little girl, this time, instead, reached out and patted Lu Yan on the shoulder, and took the initiative to comfort him, said. It's okay, big brother, in my mother's room, there are often strange noises. My mother said that it is a disease that adults will get. When it hurts, she can't help but want to call. Don't feel ashamed, don't worry, I won't laugh at you. After all, your side, Sister Chin, seems to have a lot more pain than Mom's side. The little girl looked sympathetic. Lu Yan looked at it, but it was full of black lines. I couldn't help muttering again in my heart. Shin said, why do I want you to sympathize, little girl film, when you grow up, you will know who is more worthy of sympathy. At that time, you are afraid that you will be eager for this pain, the longer the better. Lu Yan's face was full of discomfort, and he couldn't help but mutter in a low voice in his heart. Definitely, at this time, he was slanderous. Some words, after all, did not really speak to the little girl in front of them. After all, people are still a child anyway. Lu Yan felt that it was better to keep him a piece of childhood innocence. Thinking like this, bowed his head again and coughed slightly. He didn't dare to talk anymore. After a clear cough, he immediately changed the subject and said, "You girl, don't you want to stay down and watch cartoons?" and suddenly ran up to do what? "Isn't it painful to listen to your sister Chin's call?" "Definitely not. In fact, I only came up for a while." "Oh, what are you doing here? I seem to hear some movement in the warehouse cabin. I came here this time and I made a special trip to tell you." The little girl blinked and said innocently. When these words were spoken, Lu Yan's spirit came in an instant. "Is there any movement over the warehouse cabin? Who is here? Could it be that guy?" Lu Yan thought of the original plot. His brows frowned immediately, although he doesn't want to intervene in this troublesome matter. But Tien knew that because of his own blending, when he killed the Skuru, would the other party leave directly? "If you touch home, come here. That would be a little troublesome." Thinking so, Lu Yan made a silent gesture towards Maria's little daughter. "Let her, this girl, stay here and don't go around." Following the whole person, it was a person who touched in the direction of the cabin. Lu Yan's current gravity control has long since reached the point where he moves with his heart. So at this moment, the whole process is floating, there is no sound left, and the speed is extremely fast. The chalet is several hundred meters away from the direction of the house. But for him, this distance is completely negligible. In the blink of an eye, he arrived at his destination. The figure landed again, 2 steps forward. It's not too close either. However, the dialogue in the wooden house had been verbatim, and all reached his ears. Although because of his appearance, there have been some fluctuations in the plot. But at this time, he came to the earth and made contact with Carol, but it was young Luoj who did not change. After this guy came here, he was in the cabin, talking with Carol, who was disguised by the Skuru. Well, to be precise, it's a temptation. But when Lu Yan comes here, the trial seemed to be over. The Skuru had been knocked to the ground by a single shot. It seems that the movement that the little girl just heard was a gunshot. Lu Yan muttered in his heart. Look up again and look in. Young Luoj already put away his gun with a vicious expression. Angrily said, "The blood entered into her body is my blood. What did you give birth to?" Since the Skuru had been arranged to hold Yongrog and the Kree, he naturally had the idea of going to death generously in his heart. So at the moment, facing the coercive question from Yongluoj, seeing his eyes full of killing intent, there was no fear. At this moment, the corners of his mouth raised, but a bright smile appeared. "You are too late." The Skuru spoke with a joking expression on his face. "It's too late. What do you mean by that?" Young Luoj was stunned for a moment, and then vaguely guessed something. My heart shuddered immediately, knowing that the situation he least wants to see happened. These Skuru people actually helped Carol Danvers restore his memory. Young Roger gritted his teeth with hatred. Then think of the powerful cosmic energy that is hidden in Carol's body, that she hasn't fully grasped yet. I also know that this matter has been completely out of control. The development has reached the end he least wants to see. Here he has a look of indignation. Lu Yan, who was standing outside the door, also flashed his eyes. If he remembers correctly, in the original book, it is at this juncture. Yong Rog sent a message to Ronan. At the end of the movie, Ronan's army aggressively invaded the Earth. Although in the end, this Ronan army invaded, it was easily defeated by Carol Danvers, who had completely transformed into a double-star form. But at the moment, I am holding the idea that more is worse than less. Lu Yan still feels that he can shoot ahead of time and kill the crisis in the cradle. Thinking so, Lu Yan's right hand was slightly raised. But at the moment, he hasn't waited for him to act. No one thought of it. Just at this time, there was a cold snort, which came from behind him. Stand there, don't move. Earth people, hold your head with your hands. Lu Yan was shocked. Turning her head again, she saw a blue-skinned female Kree, holding a sniper rifle, and walking out of the reeds next to her. Lu Yan recognized her at a glance. It is the only member of the Yongrog team who knows Carol's true identity, Mir. Unexpectedly, this time the general leader of the Earth, it is not just Yang Luozh alone. He also brought his subordinates. Lu Yan was taken aback, lowered his head again, and couldn't help but curse the filmmaker secretly in his heart. When I was shooting, I didn't even shoot the whole shot. And when he complained, Yang Luozh in the wooden house heard the movement and naturally walked out immediately. What's going on? I found an earthling of unknown origin, sir, he is monitoring you. Miner's gun has been pointed at Lu Yan. When talking, it seems that the communicator is also triggered. Immediately after, Lu Yan saw the Yang Luozh team, the members scattered all over the earth, all rushing over. See this scene. Lu Yan, who originally planned to take action and directly eliminate a few people, suddenly changed his attention. I think I can wait. Well, wait until all the members of their Yongrog team have brought together, let's talk about it. Lu Yan thought so in his heart. But the Kree people don't know about all of this. Watching Lu Yan standing in place at the moment, he didn't move. I thought he had confessed his fate. So Yang Luozh's eyes fell on him, and then he asked again. Who on earth are you? What does it have to do with Firth? Passerby, I'm here to get a fishing rod and prepare to fish. Lu Yan shrugged and told a lie without blinking his eyes. Unfortunately, he was too calm. The few people in front of Yang Luozh obviously didn't believe this. So after hearing the news, they all sneered. Upon receiving the news, several people from Chorus who had rushed over from the other side of the reed dangling saw this. He even talked back and took the stubbornly, with a cruel killing intent in his eyes. Boss, what to do with him nonsense, kill this guy directly. Yes, it doesn't matter if he is with the Skuru or not, he is an earthling anyway, and he will kill if he kills it. Yang Luozh's men looked indifferent. The Kree were originally a race to kill. So they kill, regardless of whether the other party is lucky or not. And looking at the attitude of the people on the opposite side, Lu Yan sighed helplessly. Shin said, I didn't intend to ask for trouble, why is it troublesome, I always like to find me by myself. So, Lu Yan, who unintentionally pretended to be forced, slowly raised his right palm and said. You asked for this, Lu Yan said, then slowly raised his right hand. Plenty of fruits. Hell journey, on display. The purple magnetic circle, like several big mountains, suddenly fell from the sky. The horror is it's just that this ability, under the hidden effect of the title, Shen Yin, looks very bleak. People can't notice it at all. So at this moment, his actions, to this group of Carrie people, seem to be even a little funny. Haha, what is this guy doing? Do you pray to God? It should be, yes, do you remember the last time we came to Earth? Someone is like this. When he was dying, he began to kneel and wailed. I hope God bless you. Ha ha ha, is he really a ridiculous earthling? At the moment of life and death, pray for the protection of the gods. Yang Luozh's men are all laughing at the moment. Even Miner, who has always been cold, reacted like this. What they didn't know was that the magnetic aperture had hovered above their heads. Give him a good time, Miner. Colas said from the side. Sad. Lu Yan shook his head. Following, the aperture fell. The expressions on the faces of Yang Luozh who had just smiled disdainfully at the corners of their mouths instantly solidified. At that moment, I felt that the whole person was hit directly by a spaceship flying in the sky. Huge amounts of impact. It made his whole body bones crack and scream. The pain is coming. Not bad at this moment, it's too late to surprise them roar. The terrifying gravity of the Hell Brigade has been smashed. Everyone except Yang Luozh was all turned into blood foam by this gravity. How can this be? Yang Raj, who was smiling at the corner of his mouth just now, looked at this scene, his eyes were almost falling to the ground. He expected Lu Yan's side and would resist. But who would have thought that his means of resistance could be so strange and powerful? Yang Luozh gritted his teeth. He quickly raised the gun in his hand and wanted to shoot again. But when Lu Yan took a step, gravity control, the skill Iron Curtain has been cast. Although the bodies of the Kree people are much stronger than ordinary people on the earth. But right now, 100 times of gravity is pressing down. In an instant, the internal organs in this guy's body were crushed into blood foam. Young Luoj spoke again, clearly wanting to say something. At this time, only blood gushed out of his mouth. Looking up again, there was fear in Lu Yan's gaze, and even more puzzled. He did not speak, but Lu Yan already knew what he meant. The grin couldn't help but laugh again. Do you think I am a friend of Carol, and I will spare you? Just because you saved Carol's life in disguise before? Girl. It's naive, Roger, it's dangerous. It's better to be strangled in the cradle. Lu Yan shook his head, finished saying this, and moved on to move forward. Kung Fu. The gravitational light wave oscillates. Young Luoj's whole body was directly shaken by gravity and died on the spot. Before death, although because of internal bleeding, he could not see. But young Luoj's eyes were still wide, looking towards the sky. I am afraid that at this time, I am also at a loss. I didn't want to understand. This is so good, how could it provoke such an existence? Yes, congratulations to the host for destroying the Young Raj team and unlocking the achievement. The control of fruitful fruits increased to 89.7%. Accompanied by the end of the kill. In Lu Yan's head, there was another prompt sound. The fruitful control has been increased again without accident. But Lu Yan looked here, but he didn't feel so happy in his heart. On the contrary, it is a bit lost. It's not because of anything else. But at this moment, the entire Youngluoj squad was wiped out, and the control of his fruitful results increased ability by only 0.7%. This is too little. I originally expected that after Captain Marvel's storyline passed, I would directly raise my fruits to the full level. It seems that it is not easy to do this step. Lu Yan couldn't help but sighed. That's it. At least I stopped Ronan's army and came to the earth. This is a good thing for me. He lowered his head again, he could only comfort himself so much. However, what he didn't know was, it was not long before he killed Young Luoj. In the vast universe, on the main ship of the Kree army commanded by Ronan. The communication station has already begun to have red lights, which are flickering frantically. What happened? Ronan asked. A Carey officer heard the news. He knelt down on the ground and said with some trepidation. Report to your lord, it's Young Luoj's team, they. What happened to them? Ronan cast his eyes. The Nikeli people immediately felt a great pressure when spreading the word. At this time, he really bit his head and replied, except for Firth, everyone's life signals have disappeared. We suspect that they should be wiped out. And he said this. It immediately caused everyone in the field to startle roar. Without him, this is really something that is too unexpected for everyone. Ronan immediately frowned when he heard the news in front of him. Young Luoj team, but they are one of the best elites in their Kree team. In particular, Captain Yang Rog is an elite fighter of the Kree who has been honored by Ronan several times. Over the years, following him, traveling north and south in the universe. Basically, he can get good results every time. Such a character actually died. To be honest, I just heard the news. Even Ronan himself could not avoid being shocked. After regaining his senses, anger was surging from the bottom of his eyes. Looking at the messenger kneeling in front of him, he asked again and said, where is the last signal of life from the Yongrog team? The Skuru's lair. No, it's planet C63. C63, Earth. Ronan whispered softly. I thought of Carol, who was brought back to Kree by Young Raj 6 years ago. Vaguely, it seemed to have guessed something. There was a moment of silence. Ronan, good promise, what should we do now? Ronan returned to his senses and found that everyone was looking at him at this time. It is straightforward. What else can I do? I definitely have to go to the Earth. Whether it is a Skuru or an Earthling, it is our Kree. We must make them look good. Ronan snorted coldly. An unhappy look. The Carey people below heard the news, and their expressions became excited. No one feels sad for Young Rog's death at this time. For this group of Carey people who have carved the kill to their bones. Blood and fire are their ultimate destination. Accomplished fox. When everyone heard the news, they all acted immediately. In the space, the quietly floating Kree warship instantly glowed with blue light all around. Space jumping wormhole. Preparations have already begun. Target the Earth. Prepare for the wormhole jump. Half an hour later, descend on the Earth. Chapter 71. Uncle, you said my mother and them, when will they come back? Will it take 10 days and a half month? After Lu Yan cleared up the mess on the side of the cabin, he returned home again. Seeing this, Maria's daughter immediately ran over and asked excitedly. Although Maria's daughter was very supportive of her mother from the beginning, she became Carol's co-pilot and accompanied her to space. But at this moment, when I really waited for my mother to leave, I couldn't help but worry again. So at this time, just like Little Tail, chasing behind Lu Yan, he began to question again. Lu Yan naturally knew what this little girl was worried about at the moment. So when I bow my head, I can't help laughing again. Reached out, rubbed her little head, and soothed, don't worry, you won't use it for a day, at most, they will come down after half an hour. Really, so fast? Hearing Lu Yan's words like this, the little girl in front of her eyes inevitably passed another suspicious look. Seeing this, Lu Yan smiled again, and it was not good to tell this little girl that he knew the plot of the original story or something. Just let her wait and see. Seeing what Lu Yan said was so easy. Only then did the little girl's heart reluctantly put it back in her stomach. However, there are some doubts about Lu Yan's words. But this kind of doubt did not last long. The time has just passed, 20 minutes. Above the sky, there was another roar of huge amounts of. The little girl rushed out to check. Sure enough, he saw the familiar fighter plane and landed back in the courtyard of the hut. Mommy, mommy. Seeing this, the little daughter happily jumped up on the lawn. Accompanied by her roar shout, the warplane cabin opened. Carol and his party waited, returned to the earth again. The little daughter who missed her mother rushed over and hugged her mother. After speaking, he asked again with some doubts. Mom, why did you come back so fast this time? When she heard her daughter's question, her mother Maria Rambo couldn't avoid a sigh of relief on her face. When Carol heard the news and spoke again, he couldn't help but feel sighed again, said. Yeah, I didn't expect that this trip would be so smooth. I almost completed the task without encountering any danger. As she said, her eyes turned, and she fell directly on Lu Yan, who had been silent behind her, and couldn't help asking again. During the time we are away, the Earth hasn't changed much, right? It's really a small matter, but CGAD don't worry, it will be solved by me. It is the Skuru scientist who was left behind. What are you talking about? The scientist of the Skuru. Has an animal. Everyone who just got off the plane heard the news. Looking up again, Lu Yan's gaze in front of him became more and more incomprehensible. The original intention was just a question. They really didn't expect that they had just left for less than 3 hours. On the Earth, some changes have really taken place. At this time, everyone's eyes fell on Lu Yan's body. There are doubts and puzzles. More questionable. After all, everyone knows that Lu Yan had a conflict with the Skuru group of Talos before. It's darker inside. I think it is not impossible for Lu Yan to shoot directly and kill the Skuru. Everyone thought so, and then looked up at Lu Yan's eyes, all with scrutiny. Seeing this, Lu Yan didn't understand. But instead of changing and not busy, he repeated what happened at the wooden house before to everyone. After listening to what he said, everyone knew what had happened. Shin said, no wonder this trip to space is so smooth. It turned out that the enemies were all wiped out by Lu Yan in advance. Thinking about this, several people raised their heads and looked at Lu Yan's eyes, and they inevitably brought some gratitude. Only Carol felt a little bit sorrowful after hearing the news of Yang Rog's death. Although after recovering her memory, she knew clearly in her heart. Young Luoj was not at ease with himself. But after all, it has been so many years, the relationship between teachers and friends. So right now, complex emotions are also normal. Lu Yan looked at Carol's strangeness at this moment. I also guessed why she was silent right now. So at this time, Likun didn't go to the Carol side anymore. Instead, he turned his head and fixed his gaze on the candy box in Nick Fury's hand next to him. Nothing, young Luoj and the others blended. Naturally, Tesseract would not be inexplicably swallowed by the elemental devourer in a chaotic battle. At the moment, it is still stored in the candy box. For this store there is one of Marvel's 6 infinite energy gems, the Space Gems artifact. Although Lu Yan had no idea. But if there is no curiosity at all, it is a lie. So at this moment, I spoke to Nick Fury and used it again. I hope I can play this stuff quietly. And heard the request from Lu Yan. Nick Fury naturally has no reason to refuse. But right now, this has just taken Tesseract out of the candy box. It hasn't really been handed over to Lu Yan. No one had thought of it. It's at this juncture. Above the blue sky, suddenly a lavender light flickered. Like a big star, it suddenly appeared next to the earth. In an instant, the eyes of everyone present were attracted to the past. What is that? How can this brilliance make people look so confused? Nick Fury whispered. And watching this brilliance flicker, Carol Danvers, who was in a depressed mood, turned serious at this moment. Oops, Ronan's army at this time. It must be Yang Luoj who called Ronan to roar before he died. Yang Luoj called. Lu Yan was dumbfounded watching this scene from the side. In fact, my heart is full of doubts at this time. Some did not understand. Obviously he had already killed Yang Luoj ahead of time. Why, Ronan's army will still arrive as scheduled. But right now, it was obviously not time for him to be suspicious. Because this time I look up again, accompanied by the arrival of Ronan's army. But another god-level option was activated. Bounced out in front of him at this moment. Ding! Congratulations, you got the god-level choice from Ronan. 1. There are too many opponents, we can't beat them, let's get scattered and run away. Choosing not to resist Ronan's army, and staying away from Carol and others, silently returned to the Hell's Kitchen and threw this mess to them to clean up. After the selection is completed, the reward, the title, the good luck of the slip, after the equipment, the escape speed plus 20%. 2. Can't let the Earth become the main battlefield, I'm going to persuade Ronan to leave the Earth. Choose to fend off the enemy with Carol and others, and find a way to use the advantage of his tongue to force Ronan back. After the selection is completed, the reward, the title, Smart Tongue, is like a spring, after being equipped, the mouth can be plus 40%. 3. If you can do it, don't rush. If you dare to come, let him pay the price. Choose to fend off the enemy with Carol and others, and face the Kree fleet and blow them up. Choose to complete, reward 10 lottery tickets for the plane of the heavens. Looking at this moment, 3 prompts suddenly popped up in front of me. Lu Yan's whole spirit was immediately refreshed. Lowered his head and quickly scanned the 3 options in front of him. Although there are 3 choices, it seems many. But right now, he just glanced at it. But my heart has already made a decision. The first option is too rubbish, so naturally it is impossible to choose. Whether it is the reward or the escape speed blessing given at the end, it can be said that it is very inconsistent with Lu Yan's intentions. So right now, passo directly. On the contrary, there is a second and third option. On Lu Yan's side, he showed some hesitation. In fact, the 2 choices are similar in reality. The real difference is the attitude when facing Ronan for a while. The second option, to put it bluntly, is a circuitous route. He planned to use his mouth to scare Ronan away. As for the third one, it is much simpler and rude. Don't look at the introduction, it says so much at this time. In fact, to put it bluntly, there is only one word, and that is reckless. In one breath, he directly exploded the Ronan battleship on the opposite side. Let them come back and forth. The 2 choices are actually more rewarding, no matter which one, Lu Yan feels acceptable. So at this moment, what really affects him to make this choice is actually not the other way, but the way of doing things. Although he is also confident that he can persuade Ronan to use his mouth. However, after repeated hesitation, Lu Yan chose the third option. As for the reason, just one sentence to put it bluntly is to save trouble. At the same time, it can be regarded as a fight with the silly sister. I think Carol can do everything. I have already got the system at this moment, and with its help, I have made such a big progress. It doesn't make sense, but will lose to the silly eldest sister. Thinking like this, Lu Yan, who had made the decision, withdrew from the system space. Looking at the Kree warship displayed in the midair like a dark cloud. Not only was there no fear, but there were exciting and even greedy gazes in the eyes. Good job. No one in Zhengzhou will try it out. The new skill I have acquired is the perfect target for you. Lu Yan said so, then turned his head and got up towards Phoenix. Let her not go away and wait for him to return with peace of mind. Then it was under the gaze of everyone's stunned eyes. The body shape flies, like an arrow from the string. Even directly use the fruitful ability, directly floating in the air. Do not retreat but advance. Actively towards the outside of the atmosphere, the hovering Kree warship rushed over. Ah, Lu Yan, wait a minute. Standing in place, with frowning and worrying about this, everyone in Nick Fury was dumbfounded when they saw this scene. Especially for Nick Rui, for a smart person like him, what he likes most on weekdays is to make decisions and then move. Seeing that Lu Yan was so reckless, he rushed forward. While worrying, he turned around and couldn't help complaining towards Phoenix. I feel that Lu Yan's actions at this moment are too reckless. Although he knows the power of Lu Yan well, he can even summon a meteorite to destroy most of the capital's territory. But at this time, it was not mutant, but the aliens who came across the starry sky. And it's an alien who is fully armed and directly driving an alien warship here. This is really more serious than the previous apocalypse incident. It is not an exaggeration to say that it is the real end of the world. So right now, the young Nick Fury can't help but panic. But he reacted so. The rest of the people standing beside him didn't care much. Advertisement. Especially Phoenix. After experiencing all kinds of things, he has already reached 100% trust in Lu Yan. So at this moment, even seeing him attacking the Kree warship alone, I didn't express any concern, but felt that Lu Yan at this moment would definitely win. Phoenix is so. The silly eldest sister Corolla next to her laughed even more, haha. This guy is a natural adventurer. Since I was young, I didn't know what the danger was, otherwise it would not be possible to engage in fighter piloting that is impossible for women in this era. It is precisely because of this. At the moment, she saw Lu Yan suddenly rush out and face the Carey battleship alone. Instead of feeling that there is anything wrong, a deep appreciation came out of my heart. Let's applaud again and again below. Even the unhappiness that had flowed out because of Lu Yan and his refusal to accompany them to outer space is now completely dissipated. Pretty, this can be my Carol's friend. But since you have all gone, I can't naturally give up. Wait for me, Lu Yan. Carol laughed. With that said, following her figure, she also controlled the surprising energy that she had initially grasped in her body. The same outer space rushed past, watching the two rise into the air like gods. Nick Fury opened his mouth several times, obviously wanting to say something, but in the end, he reluctantly chose to shut up again. Because he knows clearly, the next battle is no longer something ordinary people like him can participate in. All he can do right now seems to be praying. Lu Yan and others just left. At the same time, above the atmosphere, Ronan had received relevant news for the first time. But at this moment, watching Lu Yan projected by the staff in front of him, as well as the image of the two Carol lifting off, not only did not feel panic. Instead, they sneered again and again. Especially when the gaze falls on Lu Yan at the forefront. The bottom of his eyes did not conceal his contempt. This should be the guy who killed Young Raj and the others before. It does seem to have some ability. But with this little method, is it going to directly challenge the entire Kree warship alone? I really don't know who gave him the courage. What? Yelling is arrogant, fine. I think it's a praying man's arm blocking the car. When a group of Carey people heard the news, they also spoke one after another, and they were frightened to judge Lu Yan's behavior. Some people even stood up and took the initiative to appeal to Ronan, intending to end the game and solve this ridiculous guy himself. For the excitement of everyone at this time, Ronan chose to refuse, but did not agree. After turning his head, he turned to the console and ordered again. If the order goes on, all the ballistic missiles will be launched, just to deal with a few people on Earth. What's the point? I want to directly destroy most of the planet in front of him. At that time, look at him, can he be so arrogant? Ronan's eyes flashed again and again. This made everyone present shudder. Anyone familiar with Ronan knows it. Right now, he is not speaking harshly, but stating the facts. It's the scariest place. So everyone nodded and hurriedly expressed their approval. After that, he used the control room to spread Ronan's order to the entire army. After a while, the icy cabins opened one after another. Huge, like the huge amounts of missiles of the Tongtianju, directly rushed out of this battleship. Dragging a long tail flame, at this moment, it was like a shooting star, slammed into the ground from midair. Huge amounts of missiles pierced through the clouds. Watching this scene, Nick Fury below couldn't help showing despair in his eyes. But at the moment, he didn't intend to let everyone escape. Because he knew that once Lu Yan and others failed with this kind of offensive, they don't have to run away at all. Not only them, the entire hemisphere where the United States is located is a dead end. One after another giant missiles were thrown out by the Kree battleship. A long tail flame is now falling down. In an instant, the eyes of everyone present were attracted to the past. Lu Yan's main attention right now is naturally placed on top of this batch of giant missiles. Look up at this moment. My heart is also full of wonder. Although my heart is not afraid of the Kree people. But at the moment, I have to admit that if it is only from the technological level, there is indeed a big gap between the Earth and the planet Kree. Thinking, he hasn't spoken yet. Behind him, Carol, Captain Marvel, who has transformed into a double star form, has caught up. Looking at the missiles that fell at this moment, I was also not afraid, but I turned towards Lu Yan with some joking in my eyes, and said again, "How about it, boy, do you really plan to be strong and lead the battle alone? Why don't we join hands? I feel terribly strong in the 7 of the 98. Carol clenched his fist, and said this to Lu Yan now. It doesn't mean to show off, but to tell the truth. Naturally, Lu Yan also knows how powerful Carol is, who has thoroughly mastered Tesseract. Even this crisis of Kree invasion can be easily handled by the other person alone. But at this moment, since he has accepted the task on the system side, there is no plan to back down. Carol transformed into Captain Marvel, although strong. But Lu Yan is obviously not weak here, okay. Not to mention that he obtained the skill of killing Goddess of Mercy Thousand-Handed Buddha in the westward journey through a lottery not long ago. How terrible it is, relying solely on the gravity control of heavy fruits, and the resurrection armor he got in the previous lottery. Lu Yan felt that he might not lose the entire Kree Starfleet this time. Or else, just do a big ticket. Nick Fury, wait to scare your eyes off. Lu Yan lowered his head and said to himself in his heart. After silently putting away the title of Shen Yin. Turning his head again, he smiled again at the thing about Carol next to him. Are you going to be brave? You'll know in a moment. Now, get out of the way, woman. Next, is my personal show. Lu Yan spoke. Finish saying this. Heavy fruits. Anti-gravity. Cast it again. The purple halo burst out from under his feet. The speed of the entire figure suddenly increased several times. In an instant, Carol opened up a distance from Carol, who was on par with him. In the eyes of everyone at this time, it really looked like an arrow from the string. Alone, he slammed into the sky full of missiles. This guy won't be really crazy, right? Watching this scene, Carol couldn't help but lose his voice. I was also a little suspicious. I haven't figured out what medicine is selling in the gourd. But at this moment, she hasn't waited for her to ask again. At this moment, Lu Yan's hands were already folded in front of him. Eyelids closed slightly. Skill Thousand-Handed Buddha has been deployed. In an instant, above the midair, it seemed as if a gust of wind started. It directly smashed the dark clouds covering most of the sky. Then, under the gaze of everyone's shocking eyes, he saw the need for a thousand-hand Guanyin and quickly appeared behind Lu Yan. What the hell is this? The Eastern Buddha. No, it is Guanyin. Could it be Mutant's ability? Lu Yan, why can you summon such a terrifying thing? The marinated egg below. Ah, no, it should be said that it is Nick Fury. At this moment, he is very unmannered and startled roar again. At this time, the reaction to this was much more excited than Lu Yan expected. No way, mutants matter, for him, is easy to understand. But right now this Guanyin phantom appeared. It really challenges Nick Fury's three views. However, at this moment, no one will care about Nick Fury's heart and what kind of stormy waves have set off. In Maria Rambo's home, everyone's eyes were on the sky. It's not just them. Under such a big battle, the residents of the entire Louisiana state can clearly see the phantom of Guanyin rising into the sky. Avalokitesvera, directly revealed to the world. This is exactly like a miraculous scene, and the impact on everyone is too great. Even at this moment, it is facing a missile deterrence that can destroy the world. Still calm, There is a majestic momentum that does not move. What is this, God? Is it a god in the east at this time? Why did we suffer a disaster that was almost annihilating? It turned out that the gods of the east showed miracles. Yehehua, have you abandoned us? Countless missionaries mourned in the church in the state of St. Louis Anna. I feel that my belief in God has always been inevitably shaken at this moment. Ronan, above the atmosphere, looked at the huge amounts of Guanyin phantom at this moment. The brows were also frowned. Suddenly, I felt something bad in my heart. But this matter, in front of everyone, still snorted coldly. Obviously, I don't think that just by relying on this weird Guanyin statue, it can block a missile attack that is enough to destroy nearly half of the Earth. However, he hadn't really said this in front of everyone. In the next instant, he couldn't help but change his face again, and his body instantly stiffened. Because following closely, he found that with the appearance of this Guanyin phantom, another magical tool was also revealed from the void by Lu Yan. Towards the front, began to throw frantically. Every kind of magical implement is the product of pure energy manifestation. Although it is impossible to own, only the legend in the myth is almost a terrifying power that can change the world. But right now, it is still very scary. Feel it on Lu Yan's side. Compared with before, the meteorites he shot in the pyramids country are completely strong but not weak. At the moment these magical instruments were shot by him, rewinding towards the midair, and the missile slammed into each other. It's really terrifying to the extreme. At that moment, it was really like Mars hitting the Earth. There was no time for everyone present to react at all. Immediately, I heard rumbling. Rumbling. A series of explosions resounded like thunder in everybody's ears. Terrorist missile attack. At this moment, Lu Yan's move of the thousand-handed pagoda was all directly broken into pieces. Countless people looked up and saw a scene that will never be remembered at this moment. Accompanied by the explosion of the bomb, the boundless flame immediately swept away in all directions. At that moment, everyone felt that the entire Tiangong had been burned out of a huge amount of whole by this blow. The sea of fire is boundless. Seeing that Carol, who had been chasing after him, was a little lost. But Lu Yan did not. At this moment, there was a small whistle, and then when he left, he would urge the Dharma to directly cross the huge sea of flames in front of him. Appeared at the top of the atmosphere, alone, and the steel battleships on the opposite side, like hills. The confrontation began. With the idea of pretending to be forceful, you must pretend to be to the end. He spread the voice directly. Indifferent. At this level, you dare to invade the Earth for 10,000 years. I want to see, wait today, who dares to cross this realm. Lu Yan sneered, accompanied by the effort to speak. Avalokitesvara behind him, all the arms that were originally folded were open. Thousands of arms pushed away. At this time, it was really like a face, a huge fan composed entirely of arms. It's like an invisible wall again. It is directly isolated between the Earth and the Kree. Watching this scene, even for Ronan, his pupils suddenly tightened. For the first time, it really felt tricky. Strong, really strong pervert. Even Ronan, who has always been arrogant, has to admit it at this moment. Just now, the combat power displayed by this terrestrial man has exceeded the single combat power limit of their entire Christian man. Even in the entire universe, it is already regarded as a top-notch existence. If you have to find someone who can compare with him. At this time, Ronan could only think of one guy. That is the terrifying man named Thanos of the Titans. After a brief shock and consternation, Ronan's heart was filled with endless jealousy. He couldn't understand why Thanos could possess such terrifying power. An unknown Earthling can have it. And he, the commander of the entire Kree. The future will also be a well-known overlord in the universe, but it will not. Isn't this kind of ability the most suitable for him? The more he thinks like this, the more hate he bears in his heart. He raised his head and looked at Lu Yan, who is now in the atmosphere, who is arrogant. His eyes became more fierce. It seems that Ronan's condition at the moment is not quite right. Don't wait for him to speak again. He already had his confidant next to him, and couldn't help but ask aloud. Ronan, what should we do next? Yeah, this guy looks very awkward, and there is a Firth who seems to have completely controlled the energy of the universe. Fighting against them, I am worried that we will suffer a big loss if we are not enough at the moment. No, let's retreat first. Regroup and come back to settle the account. Although the Kree people are a race advocating fighting. But he is not a foolish man. Right now, after seeing the missile offensive he had just launched, all of them were easily blocked by Lu Yan. Naturally, I understand the truth that you can't head on. So at this moment, some people have also proposed a strategic retreat. But at the moment, I just said it. It was directly interrupted by Ronan's cold snort. Retreat. My Kree has always been proud of being killed in battle. When did I retreat? But Ronan, that's enough, don't say it. If you really do this, it will be the biggest humiliation to our Carrie people. Ronan waved his hand and interrupted them directly. Then the tone was harsh. If you want to be a tortoise, just retreat by yourself. The opponent is just 2 people. We have brought tens of thousands of soldiers and horses. There are also nearly 10 space warships. If this level is forced by the opponent retreat, in the universe, what face is there to speak of? The boss is right. Yes, absolutely can't withdraw at this time. It's just a wave of missile attacks. What if he broke it? Flip them. Ronan is very prestigious among the Carrie people. Right now, it can be said to be in everyone's heart. It is precisely because of this. At this moment, the voice fell to the ground, and Dang even got a group of Carrie people to respond. Seeing this, the Carrie wise, who just wanted to persuade everyone to retreat, shook his head helplessly but could only shut up with interest. As for Ronan, he is very excited at the moment. Seeing below to support their own democracy, it is another wave of hands, cheering up. Go ahead, soldiers, let the ridiculous Earthling see, my Kree is truly powerful. Yes, countless people promised. Following the entire Carrie fleet, it was like a precise machine that began to spin at high speed. The surface of the Carrie fleet that was originally bleak and black as ink. There was a burst of white light again. It's just that right now, it's not a leap in space. It was the boundless energy that began to converge toward the main weapon of the Carrie Star fleet. That glorious glory actually made the residents of the lower state of St. Louis in a daze. Doubt, when did 2 suns appear in the sky? The residents below are puzzled. At this moment, he finally flew to Lu Yan's side, and Carol was standing next to him again. At this moment, he raised his head again and looked at the light converging in the direction of the main weapon. The expression on his face instantly turned green. They are planning to use the Star Destroyer. Star Destroyer, is it really possible to destroy a star in one shot? When Lu Yan heard the news next to him, he was also interested, and immediately asked aloud. Carol replied, I have seen the Kree with my own eyes and used weapons to destroy a small planet floating in space. However, that planet is too small compared to the volume of the Earth, and it is insignificant. Carol paused when he said this, as if worried that Lu Yan would underestimate the enemy. After speaking, he added, however, we can't take it lightly. This shot is not much easier than the intensive rain of missiles just now. Although what she said was a reminder, what she said was also a fact. After all, compared with the rain of the missiles that were shot out before. At this time, the energy of the Star Destroyer was more concentrated, and it was naturally more difficult to deal with. But her face was solemn. Next to Lu Yan, he didn't care, and laughed again. It's okay, he can't get it out with this shot. Lu Yan said so. Then he stretched out his hand and watched Carol's stunned gaze next to him. From the system space, he also took out a Carrie headgear and put it on his head. This is the trophies he collected after killing Yang Raj before. It was originally intended to be a souvenir collection. I didn't expect it to come in handy so quickly. After going out of the atmosphere, there is outer space without air. Lu Yan's body, although it has undergone many fruitful changes, but it is mainly biased towards humans. It is naturally impossible to survive without oxygen. In this case, the Carrie's outer space combat suit is his best choice right now. Wearing their combat uniforms, blast their team. Thinking about, I feel exciting. Lu Yan thought so, and a slight smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Go, stupid sister. Then turned his head. Moving to the side, Carol said again. Take another step, the figure is as fast as electricity. It was once again, for Ronan's army, the horn of attack was sounded. Stop him. Don't let this guy get near the engine of the Star Destroyer. inside the Carey fleet. When Ronan saw this scene, he immediately spoke and issued an order. Although the Carey people are almost all fools, they are not all fools. Naturally, I guessed what purpose Lu Yan rushed over here. So now the voice is on the ground. I heard it right away, brush it. Immediately behind the entire battleship, there were countless single-player combat aircraft flying up, galloping towards Lu Yan. The fighter jets are shining on all sides. At this time, laser beams are intertwined, like an overwhelming net. In an instant, he moved towards Lu Yan, and the phantom thousand-hand Guanyin behind him was enveloped. Lu Yan, be careful. Before the power grid shrinks, quickly pass through its gap, and it's all right. Carol spoke, and hurriedly reminded him next to him. She is quite familiar with all this. However, Lu Yan smiled when he heard the news. There is no meaning to retreat at all. Seeing right now, the power grid is overwhelming towards him. Flip your hands to control the thousand-hand Guanyin directly behind you. Overturning is just a palm shot. At this time, a palm was shot forward. Next to Carol, there was a sudden thunder in his ears, accompanied by the rumbling sound. The grid of terror that was originally overwhelming. At this moment, Lu Yan actually tore a huge gap by brute force alone. Hundreds of Carey fighters were directly exploded. The wreckage floats in space. Looking at this scene, the Kree, who was originally high in fighting spirit. Finally, there were a lot of things, and finally a little sense of fear came out of my heart. How can this kind of combat power be possible? Yes, how can the people on Earth become so strong? Is it not his limit to intercept the missile just now? The Carey people talked a lot. Lu Yan didn't care what they were thinking at this time. At this moment, he raised his head and looked at the Carey fighter planes overwhelming the sky. A bright smile appeared on his face again. Followed the shot and continued to attack forward. The rumbling sound came again. Fight back and forth, not even 5 minutes. There is already a small group of fighters, which was blown up by Lu Yan alone. No, you can't let him go on like this. Seeing this scene, Ronan, who was above the main seat, finally couldn't sit still. He said so. After turning his head, he immediately turned to the people next to him and gave orders. Change the aim of the Star Destroyer, stop hitting the Earth, aim at him. What, hit him with the Star Destroyer? The entourage was shocked when he listened to the deployment. It was completely unexpected that Ronan would react like this at this moment. Use such a powerful Star Destroyer to deal with a person. What is the difference between this and using a cannon to hit mosquitoes? Isn't this waste? It also requires energy to activate the Star Destroyer cannon. A few of you are hesitant to talk. Ronan didn't explain too much. Why didn't he know that using such a weapon to just deal with one person is a bit wasteful? But just judging from the fact that he just easily tore the power grid and his previous actions to destroy the missile, this is no longer a question of not being wasted. If you can't stop him right now, greet the entire Carey battleship. There is bound to be the only way to go. You must kill him this time. If it was just jealous before, Ronan at the moment really has the heart to kill. This can be regarded as an ultimatum to everyone. Seeing him react like this, naturally, I can only do it obediently. Immediately I saw the muzzle of the Star Destroyer lifted slightly. At this time, he aimed at Lu Yan's direction. The aiming red light lights up. Lu Yan felt a sense of crisis in his heart. Looking at this, Carol from the rear couldn't help but yelled again. Gao roar, be careful, but at this time, it seemed that it was too late to speak. The Star Destroyer was completely charged when they first met. No one thought of it. At this moment, Ronan really launched a ruthless attack, and even Lu Yan fought against him and chose to ignore the thousands of Kree fighters that contained him. So now it was accompanied by a low growl from Ronan. In an instant, a azure blue beam of light rushed directly out of the Carey Star battleship. It's like a sharp white sword all over. It's like being thrown by the gods' chew out, the spear of the gods' punishment when he punishes people. It directly shattered the space and smashed towards Lu Yan's place. Do not want. Carol stared. At this time, it was too late to rush over to help. The energy contained in that beam of light is so powerful. And under the impact of this light, thousands of Kree fighters, and Lu Yan's figure, it melted in an instant, completely turned into nothingness. After Guanghua settled down, Carol looked at the empty battlefield with a chill. As for Ronan, the smile on the corner of his mouth started to become more and more unscrupulous. Idiot, at your level, do you dare to fight our Carrie people? Go ahead, continue to attack the Earth, today we are going to take the whole Earth. Ronan, who consciously solved the big trouble, was full of confidence. But at this time, not yet, wait for him to do something. Immediately afterwards, I heard another explosion in front of me. A space battleship belonging to the Kree. It exploded directly. It turned out to be Carol in double star form. At this time, she was completely angry. Just now, a single person directly penetrated an entire space battleship. I forgot, there is this guy. Looking at the angry Carol opposite. Ronan lowered his head and cursed unlucky secretly. But this time, there is no plan to continue to resist. At this moment in my heart, a retreat also emerged. It's not Ronan's opinion that Carol is stronger than Lu Yan. But it was the previous duel with Lu Yan, they were really damaged too badly. Not to mention that they are here now, nearly half of their military power has been completely blown by Lu Yan. The most important thing at this time is the serious damage to morale. Although Ronan is arrogant, he is not really a brainless person. Seeing the subordinates next to him, their bodies had already begun to tremble slightly. I also know that at this moment, no matter how much he has a lot of tongue, I'm afraid it can't arouse everyone's fighting spirit again. In all things, haste will not be achieved. I thought that if he persisted in this way, he might destroy his entire fleet today. Ronan lowered his head and sighed secretly, finally reluctantly announcing his retreat. I intend to wait until the future is fully prepared, regroup, and then come back to seek revenge. But right now he just spoke and said this choice. The space transition door behind him was just about to start. On all sides of the battleship, there was suddenly a red light. Diddy, the rapid alarm sound. It suddenly rang in his ears. What's happening here? Battleship. There is something outside our battleship. What? Ronan wondered. Subsequently, the picture outside the battleship was retrieved. Looked at standing outside of his battleship at this moment. The black-haired, black-eyed teenager with a bright smile, Nanos. It was Ronan who couldn't help but screamed. It's him. How is this possible? This guy, how can he resist the next Star Destroyer without dying? Ronan was shocked and roar kept going. At this moment, Lu Yan was standing outside the Carrie Star battleship. Watching myself refresh the time, it became a 300-hour resurrection A. My mood has become a little less beautiful. MMP, fortunately, I have the resurrection armor in my hand, otherwise I would really almost play off. Use the Star Destroyer to hit me, it's okay, the Kree. Then you guys, don't leave any of them today. Lu Yan gritted his teeth. After saying this, it changed. The skill Thousand-Handed Buddha is used again. Boom. This time, the giant thousand-hand Guanyin phantom flashed. Countless arms waved. A stab, it directly shattered the right wing of the Carrie Star ship in front of you. Stab. The right wing of the Kree's starship main ship has been directly exploded. With thick black smoke pouring up, the entire interstellar ship began to tremble. Who can stop this guy? Ronan asked. But at this moment, everyone was silent, and no one dared to respond at this moment. Obviously, everyone was shocked by Lu Yan's actions before. But think about it, an existence that can't even be destroyed by the Star Destroyer. You let them go up like this and be tough with each other. Didn't that make them find their own way of death? Reckless man, not a fool. They will not go to death in vain. Besides, Ronan's previous shot, incidentally, also destroyed thousands of Kree fighters. Among them, most of them are brothers of the same race of everyone present. Although I didn't say anything, but the lips are dead, the teeth are cold, and the rabbits and foxes are sad, they are still inevitable. So everyone bowed their heads at the moment, and they all turned a deaf ear to Ronan's words. Roland looked at their reaction and naturally guessed what everyone was thinking. At this moment, he bowed his head, cursing secretly in his heart. I also feel very unhappy. Now he opened his mouth and was about to speak again. The fleet pilot in front of him screamed again. Surprised, what do you do? Ronan snorted coldly. The operator turned his head and looked pale when he looked at him. When he speaks again, he stubbornly said again. It exploded, sir, the space cruiser on our left also exploded. What? Left wing? How is this possible? Ronan was furious. I just wanted to say, isn't Luyan on the right? Why did the left explode suddenly? Then I saw again, on the holographic screen, that figure like a streamer. This reacted. Yes, for them at the moment. The threat is not only Luyan in front of him. Carol is also very tricky. Assholes, what a bunch of fools. Just thought of this. Ronan took the initiative to finally wake up. I found that at this moment, I really can't stay in love anymore. One Luyan is enough for them. Plus Carol. This battle is simply a one-sided crush. So he turned his head and immediately ordered again, retreat. All retreat. Let's return to Kree Star. A few dozen minutes ago, the carry was still aggressive and fighting spirit. At this time, all of them were beaten and lost their temper. When Ronan said so, no one refuted it. On the contrary, I felt relieved in my heart. But right now, if they want to retreat, it won't be so easy. Luyan, who moved the real fire, how could he leave them so easily? Almost at the same time they were talking, Luyan had already shot, smashing most of the entire Kree warship to pieces. Seeing this helpless, Ronan could only choose to abandon the car and save his handsome. Abandon the Carry Star main battleship. Instead, take a small spacecraft to carry out space jump work. And also to prevent Luyan from targeting him here. Ronan was cunning. At this time, more than 100 spacecraft were released at the same time, and they were carrying out space transition work at the same time. Luyan saw this, although in a short time, he exploded nearly half of them with all his strength, a total of more than 50 spaceships. But unfortunately, Roland's luck is really good. He was not seen in these exploded spaceships. At this moment, he really caught the opportunity. From this mortal situation, it's gone. Ha, shit guys, there will always be a day to protect your head. Luyan snorted coldly. Looking at the dimensional wormhole that is about to disappear, he said so. But right now, he didn't set off, and he continued to chase. After all, the wormhole sighed. This is where the real Kree Star is. Gathered above, almost an entire planet of Kree combat power. Although Luyan was tough this time, he almost blasted Roland's advanced troops. But he didn't feel complacent because of this in his heart, and felt that he was invincible in the world. In fact, he knew it very well. Knowing that at this moment, the reason why I was able to achieve such a result. The main reason was Ronan's carelessness to underestimate the enemy at the beginning, and he didn't bring his Kree Star's main combat power. Moreover, don't look at how he played CGAD just now. In fact, using the skills multiple times will consume huge amounts of Luyan's physical strength. Really go over and fight a protracted war. Luyan didn't think that at the moment, he already possessed the terrifying power to challenge an entire planet by himself. So at this moment hesitation repeatedly, still chose to stand still and not move. Just in my heart, he arranged a few words of Ronan silently. Although at this moment, I feel very upset about this guy's escape. However, he didn't really jump into a rage, and completely lost his attitude in front of everyone. Because he knew very well in his heart, I and him will always meet again. I remember it was the plot of Guardians of Galaxy, right? This guy is the big boss. Well, maybe Xingju won't have to dance awkwardly when the time comes. Just leave it to me to clean him up. When the time comes, see if I will blow your dog's head. Luyan thought so in his heart. Come back to mind again. Carol, who was also beside him, hovered. At this time, he looked at Luyan who was standing still, panting slightly. She was worried, and couldn't help asking again. After asking many times, it was confirmed that Luyan was really healthy. Carol finally regained her stupid eldest sister's demeanor again. Immediately left the tragic battle just now behind. At this moment, he reached forward and patted Luyan on the shoulder. Instead, he asked again enthusiastically. I want to know the amazing operation of his hard anti-star cannon not dying before. How did it do it? For this kind of inquiry, Luyan naturally cannot tell the truth and tell the other party the truth. Can only Tang Sai said that his ability is different. The speed is amazing. Carol laughed when he saw this. Although I know that Luyan's words may be a bit wrong. But at the moment it is also interesting. After all, I didn't break the casserole to ask the end. Turning his head again, looked at the wreckage of the warship scattered around the world, as well as the corpse of the Kree. The silly elder sister who has always been sunny inevitably sighed again. Obviously, I really don't understand it. What is this meaningless war for? I felt a little confused for a while. Carol thought about the philosophy of life. Lu Yan after a short break. Get up again and get up. In his head, there was a familiar system prompt, which rang again. Ding. Congratulations to the host, successfully defeated the Kree fleet, and completed the selection of, from Ronan. Reward. 10 lottery tickets for the plane of the heavens. The Carey people have retreated. The selected task has naturally been completed. But at the moment, the sound of this notification doesn't really make him happy. What excites him most is to follow closely, and a reminder sounded in his mind. Ding. Congratulations to the host, successfully defeated the Kree fleet, smashed the plot to invade the Earth, and unlocked new achievements. Reward. Fruitful. Control increased to 100%. Because the plenty of fruits has reached its full level, the template character, Fujitora smiles and unlocks. Template character, Fujitora smiles. Lu Yan watched this news suddenly pop up in his head. The whole person's eyes lit up, and the spirit came in an instant. He spoke immediately and asked. System, this unlocks the character template of Fujitora smile. What does it mean specifically, can you explain it? Lu Yan asked. The system doesn't have any haka about this. Hearing his question, he followed up and explained. Ding. The so-called unlocking of the character template actually means that the host thinks that it has complete control of all the abilities of the template character and can use it at will. Quote. Use it as you like. If this thing is not unlocked, I use it now, and it seems that it hasn't been affected in any way, right? Lu Yan still puzzled. The system continued. Definitely can be used, but the host's ability use will fluctuate according to the personal state of the system. As the personal state is good or bad, there will be fluctuations. Lu Yan was startled. After careful consideration. Finally, I fully understand the meaning of the system. It sounds complicated, but in fact, it is very easy to understand when it is really explained. In the words of online games, that is after thoroughly awakening the character template. Lu Yan's use of the entire ability is fully digitized. It will not happen with physical fatigue or poor condition. This awkward thing caused fluctuations in the power of the move. Instead, all the moves, at this time, under his control, it was always at its peak. So from this perspective, this awakening is a character template, although it does not have much influence on his strength on paper. But for the improvement of personal strength, it has reached the level of horror. Even if you don't make a move at the moment. Lu Yan felt it a little. I also felt that my control over power was 10% higher than when I had just fought against Ronan and the Kree fleet. Good thing. Great thing. This is the biggest gain of my trip. Lu Yan thought so, and the corners of his mouth rose slightly, finally showing a satisfied smile. And looking at the smile on his face at this moment, Carol, standing next to him, inevitably passed a touch of astonishment. Although she didn't know what happened just now. But right now, it can be clearly felt. Lu Yan had just been fighting, and the exhaustion that had enveloped his whole body disappeared instantly. How is this possible, Lu Yan? How did you do it? Carol couldn't help but asked again. She still felt that she had somehow obtained the energy hidden in Tesseract, which was already very remarkable. But right now, after seeing Lu Yan's state at the moment, he knew that he was wrong. And it is very wrong. Why does this guy have so many secrets? Carol was puzzled, but unfortunately, what was waiting at this time was naturally still Lu Yan's prevarication. Lu Yan, after laughing, looked at the other side, puzzled. Then he opened his mouth and flickered again. He attributed his situation to the super recovery ability of his mutant's awakening. Well, just like Wolverine Logan. Then finish this. Don't wait for Carol to continue to ask. So he set off again and flew back towards the Earth. Although this battle lasted for a short time. But when he wants to come, for people who care about themselves. Waiting is bound to suffer every minute. So here, he can't wait to meet Phoenix again. The facts are similar to what he thought. Anyway, at this moment, Lu Yan's figure just fell from midair. Phoenix had already trod and plunged into his words. With some anxiety and palpitations, he said again. Lu Yan, you are back. You don't know. I just saw so many spaceships in the sky bursting apart, how worried I was. I thought that you would really encounter something unexpected in this battle." Lu Yan bowed his head when he heard the news, looking at Phoenix with a worried face at this moment. There is also a warm color passing through the fundus of the eye. Reaching out, rubbed this little girl's head affectionately. Then he opened his mouth and said again, "Silly girl, don't think about it, haven't I come back safely? Look at my current state, do you look a little injured?" And, I know Lu Yan is the best. When Phoenix heard the news next to him, he nodded excitedly. At this time, the little face blushed, looking at Lu Yan's gaze, it was both admiration and admiration. The whole person can't wait to melt in Lu Yan's arms like this. With that look, she could see Ms. Maria Rambo next to her, feeling a lot of emotion in her heart for a time. As the only woman in the field who has married and had children, Maria Rambo understands naturally. What does all this mean? Chin, Nizi's heart, is completely tied to Lu Yan alone. But how long hasn't the two of them been in the court? It was interrupted again by a clear cough. Don't get me wrong, it's really not Maria Rambo's incomprehensible style. Appeared at this time, interrupting the two-person world of the two. It's Nick Fury, the marinated egg. Marinated eggs are not idiots either. Naturally knowing that at this time, interrupting the kiss between Lu Yan and me is an act of hatred. But there is no way. He didn't intend to do this either. Point 0. But the previous battle in midair was really terrifying. Although after the war in outer space, he couldn't see it. But before, Lu Yan summoned the phantom of Avalokitesvera, and one person forcibly resisted all the missile attacks. Still clearly reflected in Lu Yan's heart. Under these circumstances, he really wanted to know what had just happened in outer space. So even knowing that it might offend Lu Yan, this time, I also bite the bullet and asked questions. Lu Yan turned his head, although he was very unhappy with this behavior. But at this moment, it can't hold back Nick Fury's almost pleading gaze. With a cold snort, he turned to Nick Fury and said again, "If you have any questions, just ask. But here, you can only ask 3 questions at most. If you have any doubts, investigate it yourself." 3 questions. Enough, enough. Nick Fury was not upset when he heard the news, but was overjoyed. As I said here, I took out my notebook directly from my arms, and I was about to start taking notes. The group returned to Maria Rambo's cabin and started talking. But they don't even know. At this moment, everyone can't perceive in the mirror world. There was a bald woman with no hair, frowning at this moment, looking at Lu Yan with weird expressions. Don't think about it. Right now this time period. He possesses a powerful magician that can freely shuttle ability in the mirror dimension. And still bald. Only one person. That is the Sorcerer Supreme on Earth, Ancient. Just how powerful Ancient One is, I don't need to go into too much detail. As the Sorcerer Supreme against the invasion of the Earth by the Dark Plane. She is in the invisible, and she also pays attention to the situation on all sides of the Earth all the time. Today, Ronan's army invaded the Earth and caused such a big battle. Ancient here, it is naturally impossible to completely ignore it. In fact, after she got the news, it was also the first time, using the space gate, to reach the state of St. Louis. I thought this time, after I came here, it is unavoidable to face a fierce battle. But even she herself didn't expect it to be. After the real arrival at this time, I would see such a scene unexpectedly. The entire state of St. Louis not only did not suffer from the spread of war. The Kree army, who was originally in outer space, was looking forward to it, but it was also directly repelled back. From the beginning to the end of 990, it failed to really approach the Earth one step closer. For this result, to be honest, it is Ancient One, the Sorcerer Supreme. After knowing it, it can't help but be astonished. In addition to being surprised, naturally, he was curious about the person who blocked Ronan's conspiracy at this moment. I want to see who has accomplished such a feat, it is natural to be definitely. Originally, after she came here, the first thing she saw was Carol. This whole body is wrapped in cosmic energy, and in the strict sense, it can no longer be regarded as a fellow of the Earth. For her existence, Ancient One had known it for a long time, so it was just a faint smile at the moment. But then, wait till she turns her head. When the gaze really fell on Lu Yan, the gaze changed completely. Mystery. Just as before, Carol and Nick Fury feel the same for Lu Yan at this moment. At this time, Ancient One Magician looked at Lu Yan. My heart also noticed the mystery of Lu Yan. However, it is this similar feeling. It brought more shock to Ancient One. To know. She and Carol and Nick Fury are not the same. She is on the earth and has lived for endless years. See the vicissitudes of Sorcerer Supreme. It can be said that there are many secrets about the earth. Looking at the world, there are very few that can be said to know more than Ancient One. It is precisely because of this. At this time, I discovered in Ancient One that I couldn't see through a young man. Will feel extremely astonished. Immediately afterwards, there is the continued observation that exists in the mirror dimension at this moment. She stayed here at this moment. It's not so much to know what the result of the space war just now was. On the contrary, I would like to take this opportunity to learn about Lu Yan's past. Mutant, Professor X's student, a defender of the Apocalypse Crisis. Ancient One murmured softly. The eye of Agamotto, which stored the time gem, began to spin slowly. With this rotation, about Lu Yan's past, like a movie, it keeps flowing in front of her. All this was normal at first. But wait until time is called back to the time of the Apocalypse Crisis. Especially Lu Yan and Apocalypse are facing each other. Obviously already alive and dead. But in the end it was safe and sound, when it appeared again. Ancient One Magician finally couldn't calm down anymore. That originally had a face like an iceberg. Completely replaced by consternation. How is this possible? This guy also has a time magic weapon on him. In Ancient One's heart, it really set off a stormy sea. Time. This is the most mysterious spell among all magicians. It seems that this kind of magic is a person like Ancient One, and I dare not say that this time I have completely mastered it. They all have to rely on the power of Eye of Agamotto and keep on searching. It is precisely because of this that time magical artifacts are very precious. But right now, she was on someone else's body, and she saw a similar magic weapon. Moreover, it has reached the horrible point of being able to bring the dead back to life. This is incredible. Thinking so, Ji-Yu left directly, and sat opposite Lu Yan in the mirror dimension. Looking at his obsidian eyes right now. Run ability silently. I plan to run the ability of Time Gem and continue to explore. Want to figure out the truth about all this. But at this moment, this kind of exploration has just begun. Beyond the mirror dimension, in Lu Yan's mind, there are already abrupt and systematic reminders, and they have begun to ring continuously. Yes, dangerous. The system has detected an unknown existence and is exploring the host. Danger. Ding. Danger. The system is detecting an unknown existence and detecting the host. Danger. A similar tone was swiped 3 times in one breath. Lu Yan was still talking to Nick Fury normally. At this moment, I heard such a reminder suddenly popping up in my mind. The whole person is naturally not calm anymore. His complexion changed suddenly, his body leapt, and after standing up from the seat. The look in his eyes was like a knife, and he immediately swept across every corner of the spot. His sudden change naturally surprised everyone present. Especially when I felt Lu Yan. In the eyes, behind the murderous intent. It is Nick Fury, an old agent who has been on the battlefield. This time, I also feel that my scalp is numb. When he spoke again, he hurriedly asked again, said. What's the matter, Lu Yan, you are so good, why are you such a big reaction? I feel something is wrong, as if someone is questioning me. Lu Yan replied. Did not explain the reason why I felt so at this time. But his gaze is still like radar. In the field began to sweep back and forth again and again. What? Someone is watching. Could it be those Carrie people? They haven't left yet. Several people in Carol, hearing Lu Yan say so at this moment, were naturally shocked. He also got up quickly, rushed out immediately, and checked the surrounding situation. What? Within the mirror dimension, Ancient One was also the first time to stop the action on his hand. He raised his eyes again and looked into Lu Yan's gaze in front of him. In addition to shock, a little more at a loss. Interesting. Do you feel my probing? How did he do it? I'm obviously in the mirror dimension. Ancient One is also incomprehensible about this. But many years of Sorcerer Supreme career. Let her understand that there are some things that need to be explained slowly, but the reason is that haste is not. So at the moment, although he is full of curiosity about Luyan, a teenager of Chinese descent. But he didn't show up right now, rushing over to explore the other party's thoughts. On the contrary, it was up and down, carefully looking at Luyan in front of him. Remember this guy who obviously doesn't know how to make magic, but has a magic weapon of time. Smiled faintly. Then he turned his head, opened the portal, and went straight back to the holy place in New York. And as she retreated from the mirror dimension, quietly, after leaving the state of St. Louis again. In Luyan's mind, the beep that had been ringing all the time, then disappeared. He lowered his head again, and the whole person was secretly relieved. After looking around, the gaze from the bottom of his eyes was the same as the Ancient One magician just now. It is also full of incomprehension and curiosity. What was going on just now? It's just a misunderstanding. What's wrong with the system? Similar doubts suddenly appeared in Luyan's heart. But this doubt was left behind by Luyan shaking his head again. The system will not go wrong. Who would think that a guy who can extract items from other planes such as Resurrection A and heavy fruits? It is really stupid to make this low-level mistake at this moment. But if this is not a system error, then what is going on? Is it possible that someone in the dark can really spy on themselves without knowing it? If so, it would be too scary. Luyan shuddered, feeling a little shuddering. Not to mention that at the moment, the target was really locked on Ancient One magician's body before the first time. After all, his knowledge of the world is only limited to Marvel movies. It's also because of such hard thinking and meditation for a long time, but I haven't figured out what happened. Keep going. Several people from Captain Marvel came back from the outside and gave the same reply. No abnormality was found. Really, I'm sorry, I might have felt wrong just now. Luyan smiled faintly, apologized to everyone. Since he couldn't find out the reason for the time being, he couldn't help it. At this moment, he could only put his doubts in his heart. It's just that now I lower my head again, and I am happy with my personal strength growth. It was inexplicably diluted a lot. I thought I was awakening Fujitora with a smile. You can walk sideways on the earth. Now it seems that we can't underestimate the world's heroes in the Marvel Universe. There are enemies in the world. We have to continue to become stronger. Luyan wiped his fist silently, saying so in his own heart. There was no expression on his face. After finishing the questioning with Nick Fury, he talked and laughed with the people in front of him. At this moment, he was the only one who was thinking about it. But after returning to mind, take another look. Only then found out that Captain Marvel is in a better position than him. Looks like it's not much better. The whole person bowed his head now, and looked very wilted. The evening banquet lasted into the second half. When Nick Fury began to ask the blue-blooded Skuru where they should go, it even spoke suddenly. Towards Maria Rambo, the others said again, I have decided to help the Skru people rescue their remaining people and find their own new home in the universe. New home? Carol, are you going to leave the Earth? The friend Maria next to him was taken aback. Luyan was not surprised by this. After all, there are related plots in the original work. A guy with a sense of justice like Carol, even though he was brainwashed, took 6 years. But in the past 6 years, after all, there has been a massacre on the Skuru side all the time. From this perspective, I feel guilty at this time. Want to make up. It is also a normal thing. Luyan looked calm. Next to Nick Fury, he couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Obviously, he originally planned to absorb Captain Marvel and enter S.H.I.E.L.D. But now this wishful thinking seems to be in vain. Then when will you come back? Wouldn't it be that you will not come back in this life and plan to drift in the sky? Helpless Nick Fury asked again. Seeing this, Carol smiled again and said, It's not so exaggerated. When you need me, you can call me back anytime. With that, she took out the Kree's emergency communicator from her arms and placed it in front of Nick Fury. I upgraded this thing. The signal range is enough to cover several galaxies. If you have any trouble, you can send Roar me, I will rush back as soon as possible. Oh, does this mean I can make harassing calls? Nick Fury took it solemnly. It's definitely, and teased again with some playfulness. Only in special circumstances. It's definitely, if you really have some serious trouble, I think it's better for you to find this guy the first time. Carol is serious. As he spoke, the front of the conversation turned, but suddenly fell on Lu Yan. His words were unanimously approved by Nick Fury and everyone beside him. After all, through Captain Marvel and Lu Yan's description, everyone also knows that in the previous battle, it was Lu Yan that really played a decisive role. Lu Yan naturally waved his hand quickly and refused. Said that he is a salted fish, but he has no desire to save the world. He reacted in this way, but it did not surprise everyone. As they said, they got up and left the table wisely. The private space is reserved for Marvel, Rambo and Carol, the good national honey. After all, old friends have reunited for many years. But it hasn't been a few days, but he is leaving again. Before leaving, there must be a lot to say. As for Lu Yan and Nick Fury, they went to the courtyard and sat down. Sitting at this time, watching Nick Fury, who never forgets to earn a cat, because of his appearance, he has not yet become a Cyclops. Lu Yan reminded him again out of morality. Tell him, cats are at risk and you need to be cautious in doing things. Nick Fury was dumbfounded. Obviously there was no reaction. What did these words mean? But after returning to God. But for the first time, he squeezed the elemental devouring beast in his hand into Lu Yan's hand. Well, what do you mean? Seeing Nick Fury's actions here, Lu Yan was also taken aback. When he looked up again, he found that Nick Fury was looking at himself with a solemn expression. I don't mean anything else, I just think it's more appropriate to choose this thing to be fostered with you for the time being. Fostering? Are you going to foster the elemental devouring beast in my house? Why, don't you want it? It's very good. Nick Fury explained hurriedly. In fact, he was somewhat reluctant in his heart. But before on the spaceship, he also really saw the danger of this thing. Therefore, at this moment, in desperation, this is the best strategy. Lu Yan lowered his head and glanced at the little orange cat in his arms. Hesitation for a while, and finally nodded and agreed to Nick Fury's request. I didn't turn my head enough, but suddenly I thought of something. Asked about Tesseract again. Don't ask, don't know. With this question now, I knew that it turned out that Tesseract was here. It was swallowed by this orange cat again. Okay, I said, how can you think of raising a cat suddenly in my place and wanting to throw the trouble into my hands? As Lu Yan said, his gaze at Nick Fury changed again. As for what Nick Fury said to Lu Yan right now, he could only respond with a wry smile. Actually speaking, he didn't want to put this elemental devouring beast and Tesseract under the hands of others. But no way, the previous Kree invasion made him truly recognize a fact. That is, right now, with his own power and even shield, it is basically impossible to protect the safety of these two things. Whenever someone thought of snatching what national security protection measures they are proud of are completely fragile like thin paper, and they are not enough to look at. On the contrary, Lu Yan's video shop is safer. Anyway, this guy has no ambition to contend for world hegemony. Tesseract put it on him, but it was just a name. Actually, it's not bad. On the contrary, security has been greatly improved. This is really a stable business without losing money. This is the most important reason why Nick Fury is so persistent at this time. This is not only clear in Nick Fury's mind, Lu Yan's mind is naturally like a mirror. Understand what his calculations are. But right now, he didn't say no to refuse. After all, at this moment, the elemental eater in Nick Fury's hands looks really cute. It feels like a cat. Well, it smells so good. To Lu Yan, Chi Yuan Beast does not seem to be indifferent to Nick Fury. At this time, he felt his right hand flicking slightly on his forehead. He narrowed his eyes comfortably. There was an expression of enjoyment. Nick Fury felt a little sour when he saw him next to him. Shin said that it is also a cat. The response from your side is too big. Why do I just ignore it here? It's not enough to fight differently, little man. But at the moment Lu Yan is not silent in the cat-carrying eyes under Nick Fury's enviable gaze. Instead, after Captain Marvel Maria Nambo and made a brief farewell, they found each other for the first time. There was a one-to-one, individual conversation. The main purpose of this conversation is nothing but Phoenix. Although the process of this trip was a bit tortuous, Lu Yan never forgot, at the very beginning, what was the purpose of leaving the video store with Nick Fury. It is the method that can be used to tap jade by holding the stones of other mountains. I want to see if I can learn from Captain Marvel's experience in the control of cosmic energy. See if you can help Chin to master your Phoenix Force as soon as possible. Before Captain Marvel, his memory has not been fully recovered, and he hasn't asked too much. At this moment, the time is completely ripe. So after entering, he didn't go around the corner anymore, he went straight to the point and stated his purpose. Captain Marvel Carol heard the news, followed the words, and naturally knew everything and said nothing. But what makes Lu Yan disappointed? Captain Marvel controls the process of cosmic energy, for him, the reference is not very meaningful. Because of this guy, this is much luckier than Phoenix. Although the engine was blown up earlier, he was taken back by the Kree for brainwashing and became a killing warrior. But it also got the blessing of a kind of energy in the universe. Compared with the Phoenix side, even the use has to become cautious. Captain Marvel has maintained a high degree of control from the beginning. Even in her own estimation. If it weren't for it was taken directly by the Kree, she could easily become a Gemini heart-shaped 6 years ago. Say this. It was Lu Yan's heart that couldn't help but feel jealous. I feel that the name of the Man movie prestige universe is really well deserved. As for Carol, he looked at him with a somewhat bitter look. Then he thought about it seriously. After a while, I finally gave a suggestion with some reference significance. In fact, I feel that the control speed of this kind of thing is actually related to each person's personality and mental strength. Maybe I have been stronger than others since I was young, and because of my long experience in fighter training. For this reason, mental power is stronger than ordinary people. Therefore, the special energy of the universe cannot control my mind, but will be easily controlled. Well, in other words, it is to use the soul to dominate the body. Do you understand what I mean? Strong mental power. Use the soul to guide the body. Lu Yan was shocked. Bowing his head also seemed to understand. Quietly remember this matter in my heart. He got up and said goodbye to Captain Marvel again. What do the two say, teammates who have also fought side by side? This politeness is still necessary. Seeing this, Captain Marvel laughed. Reached out and slammed Lu Yan's shoulder with his fist, indicating that he was destined to meet again. Then he got up freely and left the room. That night, Lu Yan didn't leave here, but stayed at Ms. Maria's house, after staying temporarily for one night. Early in the morning on the second day, with the spacecraft that Captain Marvel was on board, it took off shortly after it took off. He took the special car from S.H.I.E.L.D. and took Phoenix and returned to Hell's Kitchen again. Back to his own shop. And right now, just got out of the car. Before I got closer, I saw the entrance of the shop. Daredevil Little Matt, who still has eyes, was standing at the door, beckoning to him enthusiastically. Back in the shop, although everyone did not mention the scene that happened before in the state of St. Louis. But on Lu Yan's side, he can clearly feel a few people, and his attitude towards him is much more respectful than before. Especially Daredevil Matt. Wait until Lu Yan returns again this time. But the performance is not good. It was completely different from the previous performance that turned the sky upside down at every turn. Lu Yan looked at it and could guess it. It is estimated that someone had already told Little Matt about the alien war in the state of St. Louis. Seeing him forgetting his love, there are so many small admiring eyes. If it is replaced by the next day, Lu Yan naturally had to tease this guy. But today, he has no such thoughts. Because on the way back, in the car of S.H.I.E.L.D., he clearly felt the energy in Chin's body, and he ran away again. Although this kind of runaway was almost an instant effort, Chin himself used a strong willpower to calm him down. So that Nick Fury and others did not notice the abnormality. But in this version of Lu Yan, it is obviously different. At the same time, I know clearly. This kind of rampage, indeed started to become more and more frequent. Not a good sign. Lu Yan lowered his head, thinking so, and sighed again. Although he didn't say anything, at this moment, my heart really became more anxious. Use the soul nanos to dominate the body. This is simple to say. But how to train Phoenix's mental power? At this moment, Lu Yan's mind is actually Professor X Charles. But after thinking of the childhood memories sealed by the other party. But I was afraid of going so rashly, and somehow triggered the plot of the movie, Dark Phoenix. So it is extremely tangled at the moment. After the last hesitation, Do you think it's better to draw a lottery first and see if it changes? Anyway, after completing the selection of the god level for Ronan before, he got a total of 10 lottery tickets for the planes of the heavens. Maybe these 10 lottery tickets will give myself an answer. Thinking like this, he closed his eyes on the sofa, and the whole person instantly entered the system space again. The lottery started directly, this time, because there are a total of 10 lottery tickets in hand. It is domineering that started 10 consecutive draws. Kerala's huge lottery roulette is spinning again. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.